dan Ekonomika Universitas Islam Indonesia telah menjadi bagian dari dinamika kota Yogyakarta yang dikenal akan kekayaan nilai sejarah, pendidikan, dan budayanya. Dengan pengalaman lebih dari 70 tahun dalam menyelenggarakan pendidikan tinggi, kami terus berkomitmen untuk menjadi pusat keunggulan dalam pengembangan ilmu pengetahuan yang mampu menghasilkan insan yang unggul dalam bidang bisnis dan ekonomi sebagai wujud dari cita-cita para pendiri bangsa. Sebagai kampus yang lahir dari perjuangan para cendekiawan Muslim, kami mengembangkan potensi setiap individu dengan memadukan aspek akademis, sosial, dan nilai-nilai keagamaan. Guna memenuhi ragam kebutuhan akan pendidikan tinggi, kami menyediakan berbagai program pada jenjang diploma, sarjana, magister, dan doktor. Dalam rangka menciptakan lingkungan yang ideal untuk mengasah ilmu dan mengembangkan diri guna melahirkan inovasi yang membuahkan prestasi di kancah nasional maupun internasional, kami terus berkomitmen untuk menyediakan fasilitas berkelas dunia. Dengan misi menyelenggarakan pendidikan tinggi bertaraf internasional, kami menjalin kerjasama dengan berbagai institusi terkemuka di luar negeri. Hal ini bertujuan untuk memperluas jaringan dan wawasan guna memiliki daya saing global. Raihan yang menghantarkan kami berada dalam jajaran kampus terbaik di Indonesia bukanlah tujuan akhir, namun merupakan dampak dari ikhtiar yang kami lakukan untuk meraih tujuan yang mulia. Kami meyakini bahwa pendidikan yang baik merupakan perjalanan yang prosesnya tidak hanya tentang melatih kemampuan berpikir semata, namun juga melatih sikap, kepedulian, dan kesantunan akhlak yang mampu mengarahkan pada kebaikan yang diteladani, agar nantinya mampu menghasilkan generasi yang unggul, yang mampu menggenggam masa depan, dan mampu menyempurnakan ilmu dengan mengambil peranan yang lebih besar untuk menebar manfaat bagi masyarakat dan ikut berkontribusi dalam memajukan bangsa Indonesia.
Indonesia continues to move rapidly along with the optimism for economic growth and accelerated development in various sectors. In line with technological developments, the business environment now faces the challenges of competition to manage business products and processes better, efficient, and certainly faster. Competitive strengths need to be supported by professionals with characters produced by a superior education process. As the first national university in Indonesia, Universitas Islam Indonesia has a long and outstanding experience in leading and developing high-quality education program in Indonesia. Based on the noble ambition of the founders, UII is here to offer a combination of the advantages of knowledge with Islamic values and nationalism. Located in Yogyakarta, Universitas Islam Indonesia provides a convenient and conducive atmosphere for learning, green and scenic environment, as well as supported by various world-class learning facilities, placing UII as the most sustainable private university in Indonesia in 2018. With its long-standing experience spent across the nation's long history, UII is a university that offers distinguished and high-quality education programs. Accounting Undergraduate Study Program, Faculty of Economics, Universitas Islam Indonesia, is one of the leading undergraduate education programs to answer the challenges and needs of the modern business world. With its accounting learning system supported by professional academics, Accounting Undergraduate Study Program of UII offers a leading education in financial accounting, Islamic accounting, forensic accounting, and information technology. Accounting Undergraduate Study Program of Universitas Islam Indonesia also offers an international program where all academics activities are held using English as the delivery language. Accounting Undergraduate Study Program of Universitas Islam Indonesia continues to develop and maintain partnership and networking with various institutions in the country and overseas. This partnership also opens up opportunities for the accounting students to obtain a joint degree for reputable universities abroad. This is a place for the nation's best generation, ready to work as a professional in accounting and business to advance our country, Indonesia. Find a place now. Be part of the Accounting Undergraduate Study Program of Universitas Islam Indonesia.
Dapatkah kamu bayangkan kampus pionir pendidikan tinggi
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Participant of International Webinar on Forensic Audit, Elevating Competencies of Enforcement Agents to Fight Financial Crimes. The Honorable Chairman of
Suaranya termute MC.
Voice-nya mute.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
The Honorable Chairman of Accounting Department, Faculty of Business and Economics, Islamic University of Indonesia, Mr. Johan Arifin SE MSI PhD, the Honorable Chairman of Indonesia Accountants Association in Yogyakarta Region, Dr. Hardo Basuki, the Honorable Chairman of the Honorable, our first speaker from Financial Criminology Accounting Research Institute, University Technology Muara, Malaysia, Professor Dr. Zuraidah Sanusi, the Honorable, our second speaker from EY, Indonesia Forensic and Integrity Service Partner, Mr. Denny Ertama, the Honorable, our third speaker from Study Center of Forensic Accounting UEE Yogyakarta, Mr. Hendi Yogi Prabowo, SAM4 ACCY PhD, the Honorable, our moderator who will be lead our discussion today, Mrs. Yunice Karina Tumewang. First of all, let us pray and praise to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Because of His bless and mercy, we can come together without any obstacle here with healthy condition in international webinar on forensic audit, elevating competencies of enforcement agents to fight financial crimes. Second, let us greet and pray to our beloved Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who had brought us to the path of light and left the darkness in this life. Before we start, let me introduce myself first. My name is Adelia, accounting student of Islamic University of Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, let us start our agenda today by saying Basmalah together. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The next event is a speech from Mr. Johan Arifin, SEMSI PhD, Chairman of Accounting Department, Faculty of Business and Economics, UII. To Mr. Johan Arifin, please, time is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Adelia. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asrofil anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajmain, amma ba'du. The Honorable Dr. Mahmudi, as a head of the undergraduate accounting study program at the Faculty of Business and Economics UII, the Honorable Mr. Hardo Basuki, PhD, the representative from Ikatan Akuntan Indonesia in the Yogyakarta region, then the Honorable Professor Dr. Zulaidah Muhammad Sanusi, Professor on Financial Criminology UITM, Malaysia, the Honorable Mr. Denny R. Tama, EY Indonesia Forensic and Integrity Service Partner, the Honorable Mr. Hendi Yogi Prabowo, PhD, the Director of the Center for Forensic Accounting Studies, Universitas Islam Indonesia, and happy webinar participants. First of all, let us always give thanks for the presence of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, who has blessed all of us, good health and blessed age, so that this morning we can participate in this event. Ladies and gentlemen, the commitment of the Indonesian government to eradicate corruption, collusion, and nepotism in various aspects of the implementation of general government tasks has become an agenda that must be implemented in order to achieve transparency and public accountability. This is a formidable challenge for the supervisory tasks in the future, which must be faced with the commitment and professionalism of the supervisory and law enforcement officers in Indonesia. According to the Indonesian Fraud Survey, or SIFI, the type of fraud that most often occurs in Indonesia is corruption. The survey result also stated that the biggest loss was in corruption, with an average loss of 100 million to 5 million per case of corruption. But now maybe more. Yeah? The profiles of people who commit fraud are mostly between the ages of 36 to 45 years. And at that age, the perpetrators of the fraud generally occupy middle management or management level, with educational background at most under bachelor and master level. The survey result also stated that in general, fraud occurs in employees with a service file or more than 10 years, because these employees are familiar with the condition and of the company or organization. Based on this information, it becomes a challenge for the government, for Indonesian government, to make various efforts to prevent fraud from various perspectives. Relate to this, the accounting study program of Business and Economics Faculty, Universitas Islam Indonesia, tries to discuss it in the form of a webinar from the perspective of enforcement officials. Therefore, the topic of this webinar this morning is elevating competencies of enforcement agent to fight financial crimes. The webinar is organized by the Undergraduate of Accounting Study Program, Universitas Islam Indonesia, in collaboration with the Accounting Research Institute, ARI, University Teknologi Mara or UITM, Malaysia, and Ikatan Akuntan Indonesia in the Yogyakarta region. Finally, I would like to thanks to all those involved in this event, especially the speakers, Professor Zu, Professor Juraidah, thank you, Pak Denny Ertama and Dr. Hendi Yogi Prabowo. Hopefully this event will provide many benefits to all parties and fulfill what we expect together. Thank you very much. Buah mengkudu bunga selasih. Cukup sekian dulu dan terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Waalaikumsalam.
Thanks to Mr. Johan Arifin for his speech. The next one is speech from Chairman of Indonesian Accountants Association in Yogyakarta region to Mr. Hardo Basuki. Please, time is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi
Head
wabarakatuh.
of Accounting Department, Faculty of Business and Economics, Universitas Islam Indonesia, Johan Arifin, PhD. Honorable Head of Accounting Study Program, Faculty of Business and Economics, Universitas Islam Indonesia, Dr. Mahmudi. Honorable Speaker, Professor Dr. Zuraidah Muhammad Sanusi, Professor on Financial Criminology, Accounting Research Institute, UITM, Malaysia. Honorable Speaker, Mr. Denny R. Tama, EY Indonesia Forensic and Integrated Service Partner. Honorable Speaker, Hendi Yogi Prabowo, PhD, Director of Center for Forensic Accounting Studies, Faculty of Business and Economics, Universitas Islam Indonesia. Honorable Moderator, Mr. Sigit Handoyo, Master of Business. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great pleasure and honor to welcome you all at the opening ceremony of the International Seminar on Forensic Audit held by the Accounting Department, Faculty of Business and Economics, Universitas Islam Indonesia, Yogyakarta. Secondly, allow me on behalf of the Institute of Indonesia Chartered Accountant, IAI District of Yogyakarta, to give a special thanks and appreciation goes to the Accounting Department, Faculty of Business and Economics, Universitas Islam Indonesia, Yogyakarta, who initiated and organized this webinar. As we already know, the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners in 2020 conducted a study of the impact occupational fraud has on organizations throughout the world. The study was mentioned in the report to the nation, found that occupational fraud is among the costliest form of financial crime in existence. There are more than 3.3 billion people in the global workforce, and nearly all of them have access to or control over some portion of the employer's cash or asset. For the one who decide to seek illegal gains, their workplace is the most logical and convenient target. While the vast majority of those 3.3 billion people will never abuse the trust placed in them by their employer, the small percentage who do can cause enormous damage. As the report illustrates, that damage could amount to trillions of dollars in losses each year. Dear ladies and gentlemen, the forensic investigation is a very specialist type of engagement which require highly skilled team members who have experience not only of accounting and auditing techniques, but also of the relevant legal framework. There are numerous different types of fraud that a forensic accountant could be asked to investigate. The investigation is likely to ultimately lead to a legal proceeding against one or several suspects, and members of the investigative team must be comfortable with appearing in court to explain how the investigation was conducted and how the evidence has been gathered. Forensic accountant must therefore receive specialist training in such matter to ensure that their credibility and professionalism cannot be undermined during the legal process. However, forensic audit is not a legal obligation, but may also be made periodically to the client requests, as well as a regular check based on internal or external alarm, doubt, or for other reason. Therefore, there is no legislation that would make this activity mandatory. So it is a matter of possible and special needs of the company. The growing number of fraud and the amount of damages due to the fraud represent the proof that this type of audit should gain some form of legal obligation, as is the case of external audit. Finally, this webinar, organized by the Accounting Department, Faculty of Business and Economics, Universitas Islam Indonesia, will present a very competent speakers to discuss several issues, including the study on corruption from cultural and behavioral perspective, and also contemporary international studies in the field of forensic audit in order to obtain an overview of the scale of financial crime. I wish the webinar will be successful, and I wish you have a most fruitful day with interesting and stimulating discussion and exchange of knowledge. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of us. Thank you very much. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thanks for Dr. Hardo Basuki for the speech. Ladies and gentlemen, let's move on to the main event. Today we will discuss about forensic audit with three incredible speakers. But first, let me introduce you our moderator who will be lead our discussion. She is an accounting lecturer of Islamic University of Indonesia. She has completed his studies in accounting at UII in 2015, and then she continued her master's degree at Durham University Business School in major of Islamic finance. Currently, she is active as a lecturer, also researcher at Islamic University of Indonesia. Please welcome Mrs. Yunice Karina Tumewang, SEMSC. Time is yours.
Thank you very much, Mbak Adelia, for the time and the opportunity. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Salam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah, all praises belong to Allah SWT, the Almighty God. Because of His blessings, we can gather here, although separated by the distance, but surely will not reduce the essence of today's event. I'm Yunichi Kavina, very honored to be a moderator of this international webinar on forensic audit. This event is brought to you by Accounting Study Program, Universitas Islam Indonesia, in a collaboration with University Technology Mara and Indonesia Institute of Chartered Accountants IAI, Special District of Yogyakarta. In today's webinar, we will bring three capable experts in the field to discuss a critical issue on financial crime. Speaking of financial crime, in times of continuous disruption and accelerating use of digital tools, enforcement agents, in this case the regulatory bodies, are expected to take a fast response to move quicker in order to mitigate the immediate threat arising from the risk of financial crime. Although regulators are starting to step in, financial crime remains the main challenge for companies, both in public or private sectors. One of the reasons is the increasing effect in the society. So when the regulation comes into force, the financial criminals are expected or are having the chance to develop a new, a more creative and a more advanced ways to conduct the financial crime. That is why it is crucial for us to learn from the experts how to mitigate or how to elevate the competencies of our enforcement agents to fight against the financial crimes. So for that, I would like to welcome to the platform the three panelists who will share their knowledge, experience, and insight on this issue. There are Professor Dr. Zuraida Muhammad Sanusi, a professor on financial criminology at UITM Malaysia, Mr. Denny Ratnotama, EY Indonesia Forensic and Integrity Service Partner, and also Mr. Hendi Yogi Prabowo, PhD, a Director of Center for Forensic Accounting Studies, Universitas Islam Indonesia. Each speaker will be given a time for 45 minutes to deliver their presentation. After that, there will be a question and answer session for about 30 minutes. For the audience, should you have any question, please feel free to type in the chat box in the Zoom platform. And please kindly state your name, your institution, and to whom your question is addressed. For the members of Institute of Indonesia Chartered Accountants, you are pleased to send an email with an attachment of the certificate of this event to iai.jogja@yahoo.com with the subject of the email, Certificate of International Webinar on Forensic Accounting. And please don't forget to mention your IAI account email address. By doing so, you don't need to upload your certificate in the website of IAI Launch. So we will move to the first presentation. The first presenter is Zubaida Muhammad Sanusi. She is a director of Center of Leadership Development in University Technology Mara, Malaysia. She holds a master and bachelor degree from Syracuse University in Business Administration from University Kebangsaan Malaysia. She has published more than 150 articles in highly reputable journals. So ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, let me invite Professor Dr. Zuraida Muhammad Sanusi. Good morning, Prof. I'd like to hand over the platform to you. The time is yours.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and very good morning.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam. Good morning.
Ya, Prof.
For moderating the session. I'm hearing so many sounds, although we are not facing each other through face-to-face, but here through online. Let me address a few names here. Thank you for inviting me. To Dr. Johan Arifin, Chairman of the Head of Accounting Department, the representative chairperson, Dr. Hardo Basuki from Ikatan Akuntansi Indonesia, hoping that I can meet you someday.
Oh, ini barusan.
I feel like balik kampung actually, Dr. Hardo. Most of the members in the UEE, my colleagues, so I hope that I can meet you, Dr. Hardo. And then the speakers, Mr. Danny Irkama, and Dr. Hendy Prabowo, my colleague as well. Thank you for having the session. For all the members here, we have, I can see so many people in this webinar this time. I think this is the highest numbers I have ever seen, which is like 374, and I think it is going to increase some more. Congratulations to all the team members from UEE who have organized this webinar with the collaborator of EIE. All right. I really hope that the session that we are having from my talk would benefit all, not only for the student, but for all the EIE members, because I'm going to talk about on all the topic on financial criminology, but my topic will be much more relevant when it comes to the perspective of the behavior of the competency of those that involved in the area. Let me share. I think I already get the green light to share my PowerPoint directly. I'm sharing my PowerPoint now. I hope that everyone can see my slide. I'm being given 45 minutes, right, Miss Eunice? Okay, inshallah, I will be meeting the time. Yeah. All right. So the topic, this is the topic that that my aspiration at the moment, because at the moment I am in the memang pun the biggest university in Malaysia, University Teknologi Mara, where I'm heading part of it in the development where we look into the competencies when we want to increase the ability or how that we want to mobilize a very good synergy and very good output for all the organization. Obviously, you can't run away from the competencies. With that in mind, this is the topic I think is a high time for us to look into in detail so that we can really know our role to fight the crime. So untuk anak-anak S1 dan juga those have been working, obviously ada mungkin this is a new thing for you, but I hope that you can bear in mind where this will be the most relevant thing that you need to look into. All right. So my topic would be under the 4 area, the outline. I will touch a little bit on the research side because, of course, I'm from a research university in financial criminology. So I want to relay a little bit on how, from the perspective of research, when it comes to the issue of competency. All right, and the rest will be on the training and development that related to the competency. All right, so we all in this landscape of webinar today because we know that it is so much important for everyone to combat the financial crime, and this must be at the level of global. Okay, we know that every country, we are trying our best to increase our the index to sama ada for the transparency index prosperity index. All that will be very much relevant on how that we have combating financial crime or on corruption. So with that, I think many countries are becoming not so happy with this assessment because the numbers sometimes naik, sometimes turun. Kat Malaysia pun dah now go to numbers that that we are saying that it's not reflecting the true one. But how did it become like that? Why the index I mean, of course, all of you in Indonesia would feel that the index does not representative of what that you have. I've been to Jakarta, I've been to Jogja. I can see that so much values that much different from Malaysia, yeah. But then how come sometimes the index not reflecting the true one? So this is the challenge. This is the thing that we want to build better. All right, and the loss to the nation is a lot, and this is the thing that we need to mobilize, yeah, to make sure that our GDP is not taken away with all these illegal activities, yeah, from many different areas, terrorism, drug smuggling. I think drug still during COVID-19 also, I mean, it's still racun lah, racun dalam dalam society yang ada ini. Alright, so this is the thing that we want to make sure that this criminal, they are far away. They are so competent in doing the crime. So, but then those nak combat ni, do we have that competency as well to kejar, ya? Macam kita nak lari sama-sama. Of course, we need to be better than them. Yeah? So this is the thing that I want to talk about today. And the loss, like what Dr. Johan mentioned just now, is a lot. It's not, and it's rising. It's so much, yeah. And the loss to not only from the financial loss only, but it comes to this is the thing that we so sad, yeah, the reputation damage, yeah, to the person, to the family, yeah, the fine and penalties and things that we need to recover. So what that we want to go, how that we can go from there, and we need people to disclose, to let us know or how to mobilize all this, yeah. There are many perspectives. I think you all dalam you punya class have discussed this, how to combat the crime, especially in the financial service, in this new technology. Obviously, you can't combat it through one side. It must be balanced, yeah, from many side, from many angle, and especially for the technology as well, yeah. It must be, I think, a lot of pressure from many agencies outside, international, that pose to the nation. Therefore, there are global improvement making through that, and then awareness on the public and private sector partnership. Yeah, in Malaysia recently, I think about the last 2 years, has been making compulsory for all the government department to have integrity unit. Dia bukan macam siapa-siapa nak buat inisiatif saja, bukan. It's like a must have integrity unit, so that kalau yang lagi high risk, they will put macam kalau di Indonesia, I think representative from BPK. Kalau di Malaysia ni SPRM, Suruhanjaya Pencegah Rasuah Malaysia. So dia akan letak that officer to in the department for those that high risk lah. Otherwise, they can have their own unit. So as serious as that lah, that we are talking about. Improving cross-border and domestic information sharing, yeah, and many other steps lah that we need to do. And of course, this technology must be implemented inside. Otherwise, memang tak boleh nak.
Hai, oh kamu di sini kan?
Iya, aku dulu di mana?
Okay, masih ada yang mungkin belum silent, mohon di-silentkan dulu ya. Otherwise terkejut speakernya. Alright. Okay. When we talk about mitigating the fraud, mitigating the corruption, all this, obviously there are many things that we can be done. I think you all in the area of many steps here. Most of you, I think, in the first step, investigate. Yeah, this is that you need to have that technical ability on how to do the investigation, right? But other than that, all the organization must take care of this. Policies and control must have a good discipline, yeah. Must be ada channel untuk insider to disclose information, yeah. And also spend some time or some part of the resources untuk employee training. This is a must. Awareness must be doing. Dia macam when we talk about value, when we talk about good practice, dia kena ingatkan selalu, kena buat, kena ada the top management must be serious about it, and always mention it and talk about it. With that, I'm saying that many parties would need to talk about and remind each other. All right. When we do this, there is a benefit is a lot. Kalau tengok dekat PwC punya report 2020, a lot of benefit can be done. I mean, you spend time, you spend the manpower a little bit, but the benefit much more, a lot more lah. 42% less on the response and 70% less on the remediation cost. Imagine that cost saving that we can get, rather than benda dah berlaku, having a trillion loss from the fraud crime. All right. So we need to improve the competencies. All the members in the government agencies must have these good competencies. So from the junior, they must know. There are gaps there. This is what we are talking about, the beauty part when we understand competencies. Kalau kita faham perkataan competencies from the beginning, therefore we can understand what is the competencies, and we can measure, and then how to improve, kita panggil the gap lah, of everyone of the members in the organisation, and then we can do improvement and capacity building. So from there lah, that's why I said competency ni sangat-sangat relevant dan sangat-sangat diperlukan. Kalau we don't understand this, obviously very difficult just now untuk nak mobilize the things lah yang many things here that we want to improve ni. All this requires a lot of competencies from the members. So that's why like I said, this topic will be highly in time. We need to spend more, not only on the technical, but also on the behavioral or the competencies of the members. All right. So, okay. So this is where from I purposely take this, so to understand that this is very, very still relevant lah, these things that we want to see more on how to make sure that everyone in the can have this for the benefit. So going to move ahead on the second topic on the competencies of the enforcement agencies or what do I mean? Apa yang saya maksudkan dengan enforcement agent ini? Sebenarnya dia banyak pihak lah, daripada police, customs, audit, from the government auditor. Kalau Indonesia ada internal auditor, government internal auditor. Di Malaysia tak ada government internal auditor yang centralized. And then from the corruption agencies. So many parties lah relevant, and all must look into this so that dia, kalau those ibu-ibu, bapa-bapa yang sekarang ni bekerja di audit firm also, this is a good, very relevant topic as well for you to understand where competencies coming from. Kalau dalam anti money laundering dipanggil DNBPA, parties yang related to the, termasuk accounting, termasuk lawyers, accounting members and also the lawyers. Alright, we need to have to address the competencies either through the education program, through mentoring, mentor. I think kalau kat university kita pun implement mentoring program, right? So in public sector sebenarnya kadang-kadang dia jabatan bertukar, tapi that's why I take benda ni, kalau dia formalizekan dalam sistem ada, tak pernah terlupa, mesti akan buat. The mentoring program ni sangat penting. Kita tak nak the seniors left away, dia dah pergi, dah keluar, tapi yang juniors tak dapat ilmu tu. So please, this is, I think, I kata this is will be very relevant to you. Wherever you work pun, try to look again the mentoring. Kalau dah jadi leaders tu, are you implementing mentoring program or not? Jangan just based on training alone. Training tu boleh bagi the rules 7-20-10. Training tu cuma boleh bantu 10%. So mentoring tu boleh lagi tambahkan lagi another 20%. Yang 70 tu apa dia? Kita ada 70, 20, 10. 10 tu on training, 20 tu on like mentoring, coaching, all that. Yang lagi 70 matematik kan, kena dah cukup 100%. So 70 tu kalau saya face to face ni, saya dah bagi quiz, and then saya boleh bagi reward, bagi hadiah. Mesti ramai akan suka nak dapat hadiah. Kalau saya bagi hadiah, saya rasa UI boleh sponsor lah bagi saya bagi soalan yang jawab betul, UI yang sponsornya ya, bagi hadiahnya, bagi reward. 70 tu agak-agaknya apa? Ya. 70 tu adalah the engagement dalam ke tempat kerja tu sendiri. Maknanya bila dia tu dapat exposure to the job, yang lebih baik tu lagilah dia berpengalaman. That's why we need to make sure that people are mobilized, ya, dia ada mobility, bergerak, ya. So throughout your career nanti, I will also pesankanlah di sini, kalau boleh try to make a change so that you will dapat more exposure lah, ya. Biasanya rule of thumb ni manusia dia macam boleh tahan 5 tahun. After 5 years tu better you get different perspective, different places ke, contohlah ya. Nanti mesti you kata Prof Zuraida pun kerja dengan UiTM. Actually I dah kerja dengan UiTM 27 tahun, lebih tua daripada umur anak-anak yang ada dalam grup inilah. Alright. But then I ask UiTM to make sure that I'm not just in one place lah, yeah. And now I am in the training center very near to KLIA. I think one quite a big. I selalu ajak kawan-kawan kalau boleh from the UI to come to my place, Institute of Leadership and Development, 30 minutes from KLIA, from the airport, and this place can fit like 400 capacities lah. This place training is solely for the staff, yeah. The student to the campus lah. Alright, what are competencies? So this is the thing that everyone here, I think kalau ni bukan pertama kali lah. It's like you tahu competencies tapi you just don't know what is this all about. Many things people akan cakap competencies. Tapi bila you dah faham nanti, I want to explain to you what are these competencies, because you must know the type of competencies and then the level. The group of these competencies. So from overall, dia involve on ability, skill. Dia bukan macam benda dalaman yang tak tahu. Dia must be reflected, observable. Dia punya word tu observable. Boleh dinampaki. You boleh nampak, boleh ke nampak kompetensi? Boleh nampak melalui gelagat, melalui behavior kita, melalui kemahiran kita, bagaimana kita punya pengetahuan. Bila kita, kalau dalam kelas, kita diukur kan knowledge kita. Itu salah satu competencies lah. Tetapi ada lain lagi yang kita tunjukkan terus gelagat, itu pun juga competencies. Dan kompetensi ini ada tahap-tahap tertentunya ya. Ini contohnya kalau dalam investigation officers. Apa kompetensi yang diperlukan? Tahap apa? Tahap itu level ya. Level akan mengikut seniority lah. Kalau junior, kalau anak-anak S1 baru grad, apply untuk kerja, untuk nak jadi investigation officer, tentulah dalam tahap 1. Bila dah kerja 5 tahun dan mula nak gerak, tahap 2, dia akan makin meningkat dan gelagat itu akan berbeza, behavior itu berbeza. Tapi masih kompetensi yang sama. Kompetensi ni saya tunjukkan di sini, contohnya macam ni lah, adaptability, ethical accountability, interaktif. Semua orang kata communication ni penting, communication penting. Nak jadi investigator pun communication pun penting. Jadi jangan sekarang ni anak-anak sekarang yang sentiasa dengan gadget ni, message ni setiap hari terus message kan, bagaimana ya tidak bercakap. Saya pun sangat susah hati. Sangat susah hati. Takut communication itu bukan setakat bercakap lah, memang menulis. Tapi bila ditulis itu terlalu ringkas, kadang-kadang dia mengundang masalah kan. Ya? So please make an improvement on the communication ya. And ada awareness, you must know you must ada macam problem solving. Macam kalau nampak sesuatu tu minat sampai nak siap nak solve. Sebab investigation officer, kalau dia tak ada capacity tu, kompetensi problem solving, dia buat kerja halfway and that's it lah. Dalam hidup ni semua masalah kan. You nak start datang hari ni pun ada 1000 masalah kat belakang menunggu. Memang sangat mudah untuk tidak menjayakan sesuatu. Jadi that's why kita mesti ada kompetensi problem solving. Kita ada result oriented. Maknanya buat sesuatu, bila ada goal, kita akan buat dan kita akan habiskan siap kerja tu. Kalau anak-anak nanti S1 ataupun those yang tengah bekerja sekarang ingin sambung belajar sampai S3, yang paling kita perlukan ialah kompetensi The word tu ialah perseverance dalam melakukan sesuatu. By the time you ada perseverance tu, dah sesuai untuk sambung S3. Ini saya nak buat promotion sikit lah kan. Untuk semua yang ada di dalam ini, sambung belajar, boleh je belajar ni continuation of life kan, sambung lifelong learning. Masuk UI program, UI dah ada accounting program, boleh join accounting program di situ. Kalau nak di UI, kalau tidak datang di tempat saya lah ya, di Malaysia, Ari. Kita ada risk management, stress tolerance, itu sangat penting lah sekarang ya, teamwork and written skill. All these are all competency yang sangat diperlukan. Di slide saya ini juga saya letakkanlah what is the detail. Kalau you tengok dekat situ ada banyak kata-kata kerja ya, verb melambangkan behavior lah untuk sesuatu kompetensi tersebut. So please take this note. Kalau boleh ambil gambar pun boleh supaya you boleh faham kompetensi. Therefore, apa yang kita buat sekarang ini kita akan tengok, cuba ukur di baju kita sendiri. Reflect diri sendiri. Do I have this competency or not? Okay? And how is the scenario, the situation yang I can make improvement to this competency? Ya, kita tak ada masa lagi dah untuk nak tuding jari. Dia tu tak ada, dia tu tak ada, dia tak ada. Sekarang cuba kita, tu orang kata kan, kalau macam rule of thumb, you buat jari macam ni kan, satu pergi ke depan, kita ada lagi, kata kita ada lagi 3 atau 4 jari lagi ke belakang. Yang nak tanya diri kita, do we have these competencies or not? And how are you going to improve the competencies? And through the 3 things yang I cakap tadi, latihan, coaching, mentoring, and then another engagement. So all that can make improvement to your competencies. So this is again another definition. Memang dah clear. Competencies ni sangat clear. Dia dah ada definition. Dia panggil competency dictionary ya for everyone. Competency dictionary. Dia ada jenisnya, definition dia, and the indicators tu. Maknanya apa gelagat or behaviors yang must be there to reflect these competencies. Alright. So this bila kita dah tulis macam ni, this one I know, memang kita tahu, tapi do we have that? Ada 2 kat sini yang kita nak. Satu, I kena angkat tinggi sikit jari ni supaya semua orang boleh nampak jari saya. Satu, mesti dinampaki, maknanya behavior tu nampak. Yang kedua, mesti boleh diukuri, maknanya you boleh measure. This is the big challenge I'm doing now in UiTM di my university, where like I said tadi, I am in the biggest university in Malaysia. Staff akademiknya 9,000, staff administration sokongan untuk admin another 9,000, 8,000 macam itulah. Altogether 17,000 staff. Okay, student about 160,000 student. To how big is the university and how to monitor everyone, how to invest everyone. So this is the big challenge that we mesti boleh diukur ya. So this is another lagi core competencies untuk investigation. I want to share this as well because this is very much in line of what you are doing. You ingat kalau you buat audit, you buat audit lah. Kan? You are in auditing, check document, tapi sebenarnya dalam performing the job, there are many other lagi yang kecil-kecil lah competencies ni. So this is another kita panggil core competencies tapi dalam functional yang dah spesifik bila buat investigation. So this is very very interesting. Maknanya benda-benda ni sometimes memang boleh through latihan, tapi banyak masa pun memang sebenarnya terpaksa orang kata dalam engagement lah, dalam bekerja tu your supervisor akan sentiasa mengajar you, akan cuba mentor and cuba explain how to do this ya. And of course that's why sometimes you might not be happy, baru nak buat kena pindah tempat lagi. That's because engagement, kena ada mobilization among the department semua tu. Okay, boleh ya? So makin berat ni, sebenarnya saya nak masuk ke tajuk yang lagi berat. Tak adalah, suspense sikit ya. Okay. So competencies dalam IT contohnya. Kalau dalam bidang investigation ni, ini lagi lah kan. Kita baru nak belajar IT yang biasa-biasa, barulah nak belajar programming. But here another issue is on the artificial intelligence. So all the department must spend resources to make sure that their staff yang akan ada penting lah dalam IT and AI ni. Kalau tidak, tak boleh kejar kriminal ni, tak boleh kejar. Kriminal ni sangat terror dalam masa bukan minit, duit tu dah transfer dengan lajunya kan. So the agent enforcement agent kena lagi laju, kena lagi cepat lah. So must be have that capability on the AI. Baru-baru ni saya visit SPRM in Malaysia and they have told me that they are no longer just depend on the the government. Ada satu lagi badan on the information threat security, because kalau dia rely on that communication security ni, kalau dia rely tu dia jadi lambat. So yang Suruhanjaya macam anti corruption, I think KPK kalau di Indonesia dia buat sendiri. So dia ada unit dia sendiri supaya lebih laju, lebih cepat lah untuk nak dapat information. Kalau tidak, information dia kalau dalam financial crime ni, dia tak boleh sibuk-sibuk, dia tak macam kriminal yang biasa. Kriminal yang biasa, kalau saya suka pergi Indonesia, kalau bila come to case dekat television tu, kita boleh nampak satu kampung bergambar dengan penjahatnya di belakang. Dia tunjuk terus kan. Tapi kalau financial crime tak boleh buat begitu. Kalau kita tunjuk, esoknya semua evidence semua sudah hilang. Ya, sekelip mata baru nak ambil gambar tu, evidence semua dah tak ada. Jadi dia tak boleh bagi tahu dalam television awal-awal lagi yang berlakunya crime itu. Faham tak? Dia tak sama. Dia tak sama dengan crime yang biasa. Ya. So this is the thing, must be very smart, must have this AI technology as well. Ya. So this is my third topic. How many minutes Miss Eunice do I have?
Around 20 minutes, Prof.
Lagi 20 minutes ya?
Yes, Prof.
Alright, okay. I will try to keep that in time. This is the thing I want to share actually now. I dah masuk topik pada research. How I nak relay bagaimana competencies ni dalam research pula. Tadi tu dalam kerja ya, dalam kerja what that you can do. But dalam research, sebab saya tahu dalam ini, saya rasa mesti ada about 70% yang mungkin memang dalam akademik, tetapi how to leverage this dalam research, survey ke, or how to measure lah yang sebenarnya. Can we measure competencies? Yeah, how to do that? Kalau level PhD pula, level S3 thesis tu, lagilah challenging. How to coming out with that? Yeah, I'm not saying that I'm solely an expert of this, yeah, but my passion, I think saya sentiasa dihubungi dengan anak-anak S3 ni yang memang sangat happy to be in this area. And this I'm sharing with you the thesis title for the sake of to make sure that you understand how these competencies ini boleh diukur dan boleh nampak the outcome. Please remember this untuk sesiapa yang berminat untuk sambung belajar. Bila kita kata research in PhD, dia tak sama dengan survey biasa sebab dia ada satu perkataan sangat penting yang kadang-kadang kita terlupa. Sepatutnya itu memang tak ada masalah untuk kita memahamkan. Apakah perkataan itu? Perkataan yang sangat tak sanggup didengar bila come to buat research tu, sebab penat buat tu. So ada perkataan so what? So what? Itu memang hanya like I said tadi, kalau you ada competency perseverance yang tinggi, then tak ada masalah lah. InsyaAllah you akan mencari perjalanan tu. So what? So what tu maknanya, okay, kita tahu kompetensi ni penting. Okay, so what? Does it affect? Yes, it affect your decision. Yeah, without having a good competencies, then you are not making a good decision. Decision tu pula ada macam-macam decision. When we perform this under financial criminology, ada banyak decision. Like I said tadi, it's not about being auditor alone. It covers many parties as well. So my student, dia akan buat in many angle lah. Sama ada dia pilih, sama ada dalam tax officers pun dalam financial, orang kata enforcement agencies as well, ya. Tax officers ni kalau di Indonesia panggil perpajakan kan. Kalau di Malaysia percukaian, di Indonesia perpajakan. So the officers that work in that one, and then the internal auditor, the external auditor, the police, the customs, the corruption agencies, yeah. Like I said, all this will be very relevant, and I have many angle of this perspective. So banyak research boleh dibuat. mungkin on the money laundering, mungkin on the fraud risk as overall, or corruption, yeah. And all this matters to what? It matters to the judgment, decision making, yeah. And also you boleh buat survey as well to cover up, and also you boleh buat qualitative. Currently I have 2 students from Indonesia, 3 sebenarnya, tapi yang dalam bidang I have many student, PhD student, but I have Pak Yanto ni, dia partner PwC di Jakarta, and Pak Solihin adalah from Jogja. So that's why kata tadi ini macam makin rapat, makin dekat. Tinggal nak cari nak beli rumah kedua saja di kalau orang perempuan enggak apa-apa ya. Kalau orang lelaki risau kalau ada rumah kedua. Tapi kalau orang perempuan enggak apa-apalah kalau saya mahu ada satu lagi rumah di Jogja supaya mudah ketemu dengan kawan-kawan yang makin ramai di Jogja ini. Okay. So this again ya, kalau you nak snap terus pun boleh, so that you know, oh ini adalah title that be possible, so that it can sampai to the element of how are we going to measure the competencies. Back to the issue of competencies lah. All this when you're making decision, sometimes decision is about how you process the information. Sometimes the decision is about whether you want to report or not. Kalau nak report tak report tu baru masuk cerita ethical decision. So dalam decision tu ada 2. Satu in doing the job tu you make the decision, the process, and then satu lagi di reporting side. Yeah. This one in detail lah. In detail I want to explain a little bit. Kalau dalam research, minta maaf ya kepada practitioner semua, that you have to spend a little bit time tengok sikit pasal research, sekali-sekala lah kan ya. Kalau tidak you all asyik dalam audit job tu kan, tengok macam-macam dokumen. Thank you spending time today with this session. I think mesti now mengimbas kenangan masa S1, S2 ya, kena buat thesis ya. Apa benda dalam thesis yang perlu ada, yang memang semua orang sakit kepala, apalah nak buat dengan thesis ya. Saya rasa dia pasti ni semua audience sekarang ni tengah tersenyum-senyum sendiri mengingatkan zaman betapa susahnya nak membuat thesis kan. So sebenarnya I want to explain here, tak susah mana untuk buat thesis kalau you dapat tahu dari awal lagi 3 things that you want to focus on. Kalau dalam konsep tadi financial criminology, tentulah yang pertama adalah the context in the financial crime. Konteks siapa yang kita nak ambil? Konteks audit ke, konteks corruption agency ke, perpajakan ke, konteks on many angle lah. Yang from tu semua konteks. Yang kedua adalah dia punya problem. Problem apa yang kita nak ukur, yang so what tadi tu ya, di tax professional judgment ke, ataupun audit judgment or ethical judgment and decision making. So that is the problem. And then the third one are the issues, sebab-sebab kepada problem tersebut. What would be the reason? So the reason itu biasanya kompetensi lah. Dia tak ada kompetensi, that's why dia tak boleh buat good judgment. And also the context tu dalam situation aspect, situational ataupun task based. So kalau dari awal lagi you dah boleh faham 3 ni I bagi contoh lah, my student yang buat dengan perbajakan di Malaysia, kita panggil IRBM, dah tak boleh ingat pula dah, revenue board. So that is on the LHDN, Lembaga Hasil Dalam Negeri, untuk percukaian lah ya. So bila you boleh faham 3 benda yang ada untuk thesis, sangat mudah. So saya mesti dah dapat membuat galakan besar lah kan pada semua yang ada pada pagi ini, yang dulu macam rasa dah tak nak sambung belajar, mungkin hari ini tak ada masalah daripada buat tak ada apa-apa setiap minggu tu, dan bolehlah buat part time kan. Buat thesis ni tak susah, cari 3 perkara ni tadi ya. Alright, so then you will have some theory to support how from the individual competency tadi dengan the situational can affect the judgment, and what will be the process that takes place, what will be the theory, and some research method that you need to take care. Most of the time, I think kalau I think Universiti UII, Gajah Mada, I think and ramai banyak universiti, quite a number yang quite expert in the area of experimental research ya. Boleh, ataupun survey pun boleh, kualitatif pun boleh. untuk nak buat this kind of research ya. Cuma yang I tunjuk kat sini, my student ya Nurliana, dia buat dalam bentuk experimental design, sebab sometimes data-data adalah confidential, sulit ya, tak boleh tahu. Therefore will be much easier to replicate the scenario tu dalam bentuk eksperimen and we test it. So this is the way to conduct, and then you belajarlah daripada sekarang how to analyze data. Nowadays ramai je pakai partial least square ni kan. Dah banyak expert di Indonesia sekarang. That's why lah nak buat PhD kadang-kadang memang buat PhD overseas tapi sebenarnya duduk di Indonesia, duduk di Malaysia pun masih boleh siapkan tesisnya ya. Sebab semua information ni memang ada dah, banyak boleh is available. Alright. So that is my sharing on the topic of research. Yeah. This is the last topic. Eunice, this is my last. Do I have time? How much more time, Eunice?
Sure, Prof. Around 15 minutes is okay.
Okay. So the last one, yeah. So how that topic on the learning and development. Again, I want to come back, bawa balik fokus tadi. Sama ada you nak buat through research ke, through the training of your organisation. These are the thing that need to look into, yeah. Topik-topik yang kita boleh tengok, yeah. Contohnya to understand the anti-money laundering. Anti-money laundering, I tak nampak dia akan jadi satu yang dia makin hebat lah, makin hebat dua-dua side, the criminalnya side and the combating the side. And in this case maknanya the competencies to combat anti-money on the money laundering ni memang sangat-sangat diperlukan. And then we need more people to understand on the global regulatory standards, yeah. Otherwise not comply to the international to become difficult lah bila kita tak moving towards that. Yang tadi I katakan you bila saya pergi dekat corruption agency baru-baru ni, they are having difficulty with competency, how to allocate their staff sebab dia awal-awal lagi dah kerja dengan that department. So how do they the skill di luar tu. So that ada satu program where this group dia kena duduk dengan audit firm dulu. Dia duduk dengan audit firm 2 tahun, lepas tu baru dia balik ke as a government auditor supaya dia tahu the practical side of the world lah. So that is the thing that we want to make sure that everyone would have that competency, yeah. To perform due diligence, yeah, to know about the suspicious transactions. Now the requirement getting tougher, not only to the bank but also to the money changer kan. Money changer tu dah lah small tapi kekangan dia sangat hebat, whereby these people must have a good competency as well, how to have to comply with that. Alright. So how to integrate all this lah, how to integrate all this to the manpower. Sebenarnya tajuk kompetensi tak boleh lari kepada manpower, human resource, ya. So nak relate balik all this mesti sebab dia berkait rapat dengan saya suka ada 5 perkara kat situ. Saya kena tunjuk jari lagi, macam-macam Prolzu ni. Tadi 2, lepas tu 3, 5 pula. 5 tu maksudnya apa? Dalam your career nanti ataupun those yang memang already been working, kalau you perasan, kalau those yang dah senior, bapa-bapa, ibu-ibu yang dah lama pun bekerja, you please take a look on the tajuk yang kedua, especially on succession planning. Right now we are so busy in making sure that our staff has been done a right performance assessment kan. Setiap tahun memang sangat sensitif. Bagaimana nak mengukur pengukuran seseorang, bagaimana kompetensi mereka. Kadang-kadang staff berhenti because they are not happy just because of the performance assessment yang tak fair. So that we don't want to lose people for that kan. So please understand kompetensi, then you boleh understand 5 perkara ni, the benefit sangat-sangat bertuah bila kita faham kompetensi. Yang pertama, of course, yang tadi saya tunjuk on performance assessment. Bila you faham kompetensi, you boleh make assessment yang lebih baik setiap tahun. Lepas tu, succession planning. Maknanya pengganti untuk setiap satu jawatan. That is my job right now. It's so challenging. I kata tadi lagi sekali, ada 18,000 staff, nak make sure setiap position itu ada yang layak yang menunggu. Kita nak setiap jawatan strategik itu, kalau boleh ada 3 orang yang bersedia untuk menggantikannya. Macam mana nak buat tu? So kalau dalam financial criminology ni kita dah hire orang, dah memang susah payah dah buat training, tapi kita lupa untuk menengok pasal succession planning. Untuk nak buat succession planning, calon-calon itu mesti layak dalam tahap yang kita perlukan. Nak dapat tahap yang diperlukan, kena ada training, kena ada exposure, kena ada capability. So dia berkaitlah tadi tu. So that's the thing, tapi kena tengok succession planning. Dosen-dosen yang ada sekarang ini pun, again, please take a look on the succession planning. Kita nak everybody, kalau nanti pertukaran dekan, ya, saya tahu di Indonesia, di UI pun memang saya tahu pertukaran dekan melalui election, for example. We want people yang memang calon itu dia memang ada tahap yang layak di situ. Kalau kita ada lebih, alangkah baiknya kan. Kita tak nak orang tu terkeluar because dia awal lagi memang tak layak. So that is not a good one. So we want everyone layak untuk memegang jawatan tersebut. So please take a look. That is called succession planning. And then how to do the secondment. Secondment tu maknanya transfer among the department tadi, ya. And based on competency so that they are better off. Addressing the performance gap, maknanya on the training lagi. Kita buat gap analysis. Analyze sekarang ni how are we going to know that siapa yang ada gap. Tak boleh buat sebab kita tak spend time nak fahamkan kompetensi. And again on the promotion, kenaikan pangkat. Di Indonesia panggil apa, Yunis? Kalau naik pangkat ni, kalau di Malaysia ni kenaikan pangkat. Promotion. Indonesia panggil apa? Yunis?
Promotion also, Prof.
Promotion. Bahasa Indonesia promotion ke?
Naik jabatan.
Naik jabatan. No, in
Naik
Indonesia.
jabatan.
Naik jabatan.
Yeah.
Promosi, Prof. Promosi.
Bagus. Okay. So bila kita nak ada promotion, naik jabatan. So how to do that? Siapa yang layak dari yang ramai-ramai ini? So this is again competency. Competency itu ada tahap-tahap dia dan boleh diukuri. Okay. So that is the overall term dia ialah competency based management. Mungkin Pak Johan ingatlah masa saya datang, bila saya pergi Indonesia, saya rasa dah setahun lebih di Jogja. I think dah, bila saya datang, setahun yang lebih lah, lebih setahun ya. Masa tu saya memang menyebut pasal competency based, if that's the thing I'm doing. Now, I think UiTM as a giant university, we are among the first lah yang dah mobilize, and tahun ini akan menyaksikan the application of this competency base. Maknanya for whatever that we are doing, we want to base on competency. So to base on competency, the term tu ialah competency based talent management, CBTM. Competency based management, once kita dah faham kompetensi tadi, so many things dalam angle HR tu should support the competency ni tadi, and the benefit will be much a lot then clear untuk buat kerja dan sebagainya. So when we talk about again type of competency tadi, we must understand, let me wrap up this again for everyone kat sini. We talk about competency ni dalam bentuk apa? Dalam bentuk dua, dalam general behavior and also dalam technical. Technical ni tadi dalam financial criminology lah. Jadi bila kita bercakap tu jangan terlalu mendesak, tak faham semua kan. Bila satu elemen lagi, bila dia dah makin naik peringkat, naik pangkat, dia akan masuk banyak lagi leadership competency. Tapi of course lah leadership competency ni, those yang dalam technical financial criminology, you akan ada, you dah lebih, dah boleh faham lah on the technical competency yang dari awal tadi kan. So dengan ada leadership competency. So all in, this is the thing that I'm promoting so that we can understand the competency dalam investigation itself dan dalam general or generic competency yang must have secara overall. Alright. So with that, Eunice, this is all my presentation. I hope that I have shared something that can be benefit to all addressing the issues. Sebab I tak berapa kenal hari ini. I wish I boleh tahu seorang-seorang dari mana dan siapa mereka. But I think I can only gauge that ada kan yang main thing, the EIE members as well as the students. So nak balancekan dua tu pun not that easy. I hope it benefit to you to understand the competency from this angle. Dia reflect not only the job of the financial criminology alone, but also to the current things that you are doing, all the thing that we are doing sebenarnya ialah building up your competencies. So with that, I stop. Eunice, thank you so much. Perhaps nanti kita jumpa dalam question and answer nanti ya, Eunice.
Yes, thank you so much, Prof. Zuraida, for the insightful sharing, for the enlightening knowledge that you have shared. Let me highlight several points. The first one, firstly, you have introduced what is competency to us. Competency must be something that is observable and measurable, can be in form of behavioral and technical competency. And one big question to reflect is that, do we have that kind of competencies required by our job? And if not, do you have a commitment to improve your competency? Prof. Zuraida has shared with us there are three steps. There are three main steps to improve our competency. The first one, through training, through coaching or mentoring, and also through engagement. So in addition to that, Prof. Zuraida also mentioned the possibility or the large avenue for further research to be conducted in the field of financial crime, but you have to acquire one key password, is that the perseverance. So yep, good luck for those who want to conduct the further research on the financial crime. Thank you very much once again, Prof. Zuraida. Next, we will move to the second speaker. But before that, let me remind you, if you have any questions you want to raise in this discussion, you might use the menu. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce the speaker. He is Mr. Denny Ratnotama. He is a partner in Ernst & Young Indonesia for Forensic and Integrity Services. He earned a bachelor degree from Sekolah Tinggi Akuntansi Negara, STAN, and a master in accounting from University of Indonesia. He has spent more than 22 years working closely with the industry and the government, particularly in the mitigation of financial crime risks. So obviously, we will get a clear picture from the practical perspective on what the industry requires or what the Mr. Denny Tama.
Sorry, okay, Ibu Yunis, sorry. I just lost
Okay.
you. I thought that the reception is not quite well. Well, thank you.
Yep, time is yours.
Yeah, can you hear my voice clearly?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Thanks. I was actually carried away with Professor Zuraida's session, and it's really inspiring. So, first, before I start, I would like to thank UII and also University Teknologi Mara and IAI Daerah Istimewa Yogyakarta for inviting me to speak in this seminar. In the next 30 minutes, I will be speaking about financial statement fraud in Indonesia. If you allow me to share my screen. Okay, can you see it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, so these are the topics that we would like to cover today, and I will start with the basics of the issue, the definition, some cases, and also how bad our situation is in relation to financial statement fraud. And then I'll cover why do we have these issues. And lastly, I will propose a mitigation strategy, of course, from the practitioner point of view. I would like to start with the first topic here. So, as you can see here, this is the timeline of accounting fraud globally. And just a reminder to all of us actually that accounting scandals that we are seeing today is not the first, and definitely it's not going to be the last. You can see here that after Enron, the government has issued a lot of, I mean, the US government, of course, has issued a lot of new regulations, including the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. Yeah, and those regulations are actually aimed to raise the bar for transparency and accountability in financial reporting. But unfortunately, as we see today, accounting scandals keep taking place on and on. And if you Google these cases here, you would see that every one of the big four firms had their shares in the issue. Okay, so to all big four colleagues who might happen to be in this seminar, we are on the same boat actually. Yeah. Now, how's the situation in Indonesia? If you see this, you can tell that apparently we are not better. Unfortunately, we are not better, not so good either. So here, these are the examples of the cases that took place in Indonesia in the last 2 or 3 years. And I can tell you that this is just the tip of an iceberg, a very big iceberg. Okay, so based on my experience, there are a lot of financial statement fraud that actually were not reported. And if you look at these cases, you will notice that there are similarities here. Okay, one, in some cases, the companies were not prosecuted. Some of the ones prosecuted were actually acquitted. Okay, so as you can see here, we have the case of PT TAB, Tirta Marta Bottling Company. So this is a company that operates a bottling industry, not bottling industry, I think. It's a freshwater industry. So um, this company submit and applied for loan in Bank Mandiri a couple of years ago. And later on, they were found to have window dressed their financial statements. And unfortunately, the loan was also uncollectible. So the BPK and Bank Mandiri conducted audit, and then they found evidence of window dressing. But unfortunately, our court has overruled the evidence. So basically, they were free. Also, you would find out that in some cases, the investigations were never carried out. Okay, if you see the case in S&P Finance and also in Garuda, yeah, you may be familiar with the case. We'll never heard about those cases anymore. Unfortunately, because we were expecting something more tangible, but unfortunately until today we haven't heard anything about the case. And also in some cases, like in MGPL case here, the law enforcement they focus on more on the non-accounting issue. So this happens usually when financial statement complement the fraud, especially in banking or in financial institutions. So here we are. Okay, we've got a number of cases, not because we have only few cases, but because of this. Okay, so as I said, those cases, the one that we just discussed, they're just the tip of a big iceberg. And if we're talking about financial statements fraud, there are two classifications here, as you can see in this picture. Okay, one is the known or published cases, the one that we just discussed, and then the other one is the unknown cases. We can say the below the surface one is the dark numbers. Okay, But even for the known or published cases, we don't see prosecution. Okay, so we may read the cases in the newspaper, but unfortunately we never heard about the case in the court. So just like S&P Finance, Garuda, we heard a lot about the case and then just vanish. So I think what's happening here? I think we, at least our law enforcement, we have created an environment where window dressing is not seen as fraud. Okay, and this is very dangerous actually. We've created a moral hazard because people would think that okay, so you can do window dressing and you get away with that, and that's a very bad message for the public. Okay, so just to give you a comparison, in the US, you may have heard about Enron case, right? The CEO of Enron, the one that was the one that was convicted and the one that was sentenced to due to the financial statement fraud, he was sentenced to 26 years in jail. Okay, and we're not even close on that. So I think we have a big issue here because we see financial statement fraud as something business as usual rather than fraud. Now, allow me to get back a bit to discuss the basic concept of the financial statement fraud here. As you can see here, there are three simple elements of financial statement fraud: deliberate misrepresentation and intent to mislead the users. This demonstrates the fraudulent intent, okay? And then creating the wrongful impression of the financial health that leads to the user's financial loss. So it's simple from the point of view of an accountant or an investigator. But in real life, it's not easy to criminalize financial statement fraud, unfortunately. Our capital market law, it criminalizes those who provide false information to the market, but it doesn't address specifically about financial statement fraud. Even worse, our banking law, the industry in which financial statement frauds happen the most, it doesn't regulate anything about sanctions, about punishment or penalties for submitting fraudulent financial statements. So, even if we manage to detect the fraud, prosecuting it or criminalizing it is a different story. Okay, so this is our situation. Well, people say nothing new under the sun, right? And that's also the case for financial statement fraud, actually. Here you can see the classic modus of financial statement fraud. For you who has a degree in accounting, you may also recall back in the college, you learn this modus in auditing or in accounting subject. As in one of the earlier cases that we discussed, the classic one is to misstate the revenue, to inflate the asset, or misstate the liabilities, or understating the expense. As one of the examples, I would refer to the Tiga Pilar Sejahtera ones. I refer to this case because it's been made public, so I think it's okay. So they recorded fictitious accounts receivable, inventory, and also they book, they overstate other assets, and the amount of the overstatement is quite fantastic. So to jack up their revenue and growth, we were talking about 5 trillion rupiah, which is not small. Also, in some other cases, sometimes management shift cash from the financing or investing part to the operating part, because investors or the stakeholders, they would want to see cash flow coming from the operating part rather than from the investing and financing, because it reflects the performance of the company. But then, for a company that's still struggling with the business, they may receive a lot of cash from investing or financing, but may not make a lot of cash from operating. So to make the figures more, beautiful, they shift from the financing or investing to the operating one. In other cases, the management also hides unfavorable figures to give wrong impression about the risk that the company is bringing. Okay, so the one that I worked on a couple of years ago is on the NPL one, and this is quite common actually in banking industry. So if you work in banking industry, you would want to give impression that your bank is healthy, and then the NPL rate is low, gitu. But then the fact is that it's not that simple because of the business, the economic downturn, because of the the performance of your customers. So you would want to give impression that the NPL is low, but in fact, it's not. So in the case that I was investigating, the management faked their non-performing loan. And interestingly, they use IT, not accounting. Back in our college time, our lecturer says that accountants are the one who is actually responsible for doing the window dressing. But now I think we are talking about the new world, the new technology, and not only accountants but also IT. They take a very significant role in the window dressing. So how they done it? They changed the status of the bad debts into collectible by doing fake restructuring. So restructuring basically is renegotiations of the terms between the bank and the customer. So if you have difficulties in repaying your debt, and then you come to see the bank, and then the bank will help you with rescheduling, with decreasing the amount of payment that you have to make, and talk about the maybe longer terms. But then that's the legitimate restructuring. In this case, they don't do that. So basically, they just do fake restructuring. They don't see the customers. Not even the customers ask for the restructuring. So basically, what you want to do is you want to show that the NPL rate is not high, and you do that by improving the collectability of the debts illegitimately. So what they did is that they changed the data at the back end. So this was not found by the auditors, because the data at the back end, meaning that the data that was hosted by the IT, and then the auditors only check with the general ledgers, with the subsidiary ledgers, and then maybe with the supporting documents. But they don't check with the back end, because those are IT domains. Now they even stopped the computer clock, to buy times to make the window dressing. So I just want to give you flavor on how window dressing can be done in a sophisticated way, and may not be by the accountants, but also by the IT practitioners in the company. And sometimes managements also do the window dressing by hiding or concealing their affiliates. In some cases, they just want to to transact with other parties without any restrictions. But in worst cases, they want to hide transactions, and they want to side stream money. When you get credit or loan from the bank, you're bound by a covenant, right? And if you want to break the covenant, then meaning that you breach the contract, and then you're not in a good position. So what you would want to do is that you channel the money to maybe your own company, your shell companies, and then you would not want the bank to know that. So how you do that? You create a lot of shell companies. That's your affiliates. but then in the financial statement, you don't disclose that. So that's also quite common methods in stealing the bank's money. Now, you may wonder, how bad is the impact of financial statement fraud? Well, of course, first you have to define bad before we start to discuss that. But here's some insight, okay? This is the research that was done by the Associations of Certified Fraud Examiners, the CFE. You can see here that financial statement fraud forms the least cases compared to asset misappropriations and corruptions, but they record the biggest losses. So if I may say, financial statement fraud may be the highest risk among those other frauds, because even though the incidence is low, the loss is big actually. And this is just from the known cases. You may be aware that, you know, we talk about the iceberg and all. This is just from the known cases. The actual cases may be bigger than this. And as you may be aware, for example, in loan fraud cases, a lot of banks, a lot of financiers, they attribute, the loss from the financial statement fraud to the business risk. Okay, so, I come across a lot of situations where banks think that, we were just defrauded by our debtors, but then this is just part of the business risk. And this is also dangerous, because if you start thinking that losses from fraud is a losses from business risk, then that's a problem, because then you accept that as a business as usual. You accept that as part of the risk of doing business, and you take that for granted. So that's not good actually. And also in the capital market space, company who present window dressed financial statement, the victim are actually the investors, and we need to stop seeing this as a statistic, okay? Because average people are the victims. You may have read in the newspaper that the case like Tiga Pilar Sejahtera Food case, the investor was the one who was hurt the most. They may not understand about accounting standard, but at the end of the day, they lost the most money. So I think the financial loss is one of the biggest impact. And then we go beyond the financial loss. In the long run, if this keeps happening, it will cost us our reputation as a country, and that's also a very significant impact. To tell you the truth, this is happening. Okay. If you can see here, look at the global perceptions on Indonesia. Okay, one of the examples, the UK Financial Conduct Authority. This is similar to our OJK. So they did 2 years ago. They did a research on around 8,000 of the market players, and the result of the survey is quite shockingly, because we were the 38th most risky country out of 2,028 countries in terms of financial crime risk. Okay, so you would imagine that, if an investor opened this report and then, they want to go to Indonesia, and then they would find out that we are a high risk country. And this is something that we need to work out, okay? Because to good investors, governance is important, okay? Not all investment, merger, acquisitions are driven by ease of business permit or tax incentive. I think major investors, big investors, they are also concerned about governance, because to them, this is a risk. They don't want us to post them into unnecessary risk. And even if they come in some cases, there will be restrictions. I used to work for a bank for 3.5 years, and in the financial crime risk division. And what I saw there is that this is a European bank, and they actually restrict some businesses in Indonesia. Those businesses are actually very profitable, but they don't want to do it here because they think that this product and services are actually prone to money laundering, and Indonesia is a high-risk country, so they choose to just skip Indonesia. And you can imagine, how much the economic loss that we suffer from that situation. So I think reputational risk, long-term risk is something that we need to consider as well. Now, why does management cook the book? I'll just use the classic fraud triangle theory here. Okay. If you look into the cases of financial statement fraud, you would find that they usually started with pressure. Okay, so you may be familiar with the triangle of fraud, okay? The motivation, opportunity, and justification. So this is created by Donald Creasy, the father of the criminology, and he postulated that fraud can happen if all of these situations are fulfilled. Okay, so motivation, opportunity, and justification. Now, in the case of financial statement fraud, it started usually with pressure, okay? Be it market expectations, regulators' expectations, or in the case of loan, bank's assessment, okay? So you want to apply for loans and then you want your loan to be approved. So that's why you have to demonstrate a good financial condition. So that's why it's a pressure. And then when the pressure meets opportunity, okay, so if you work in a company with a low governance standard, with a poor culture, with a weak oversight from the board of commissioners, in a weakly regulated environment, then you have the momentum for fraud. Now, and this is interesting, comes the justifications. I did a lot of financial statements fraud investigations, and I can safely say that 90% of the directors I have interviewed in my investigations, they always say that this is for the greater good. So most of them think that nothing wrong with this. Most of them think that they didn't harm anybody, and this is for the greater good. Some says that, Pak, we need to be good in front of the regulators, otherwise we will be penalized. Some others say it's like, we want the company to continue the business because we have, lots of employee and their families, and those type of things. That's what they said in the interview. So it perfectly fits with Donald Creasy's theory about fraud justifications. Okay, and that's why they cook the book. Now, like good guys is doing good things, right? Fraudsters will always do fraud. We can accept that, but the question is, why most of audit fail to detect fraud? And I think we have raised these questions now and then because we keep seeing issues in financial audit. But let me give you an analogy, because back then in a college, a lecturer of mine, I recall he said that the biggest homework of an accountant is to communicate to the public the objective of a financial audit, the positions of the auditor. And I believe until today, we haven't done that. I think this is the biggest homework that we have as a profession. Now, let me give you an analogy. If you see a general practitioner, a doctor umum, yeah, he may examine your body, but you cannot expect that he would spot heart issue just by, using stethoscope. That's not reasonable. For that, you need to see cardiologists, right? But you can expect a doctor umum to be able to detect general issues. And likewise, auditors, they're not anti-fraud expert. So first, I think we have to accept the fact that the aim or the purpose of the audit is not to detect fraud. It is to check, it is to verify the accordance of the financial statement with the GAAP. So that's the first fundamental difference. And then auditors, they're not trained to detect fraud, and they don't use equipment, they don't use the tools to handle fraud, let alone complex fraud. Okay, they may be able to detect simple fraud, but don't expect them to detect collusion. And most financial statement fraud are driven by the management. So you can imagine if the top level of the company is driving the fraud, is initiating the fraud, so it will involve everybody in the company. And how would you expect auditors to find that? The data that they receive from the company would be fabricated, the information would be faked. And I think we've heard stories about that. So that said, there is a chance that the auditor can find fraud. Okay, it is when the fraud is taken as a sample. But you may also be aware that in doing audit, the sample is so small. So that's why, based on the research from the CFE, only 4% of the fraud incidents are actually detected by the auditors. So please don't expect auditors to find fraud. But then I think there is a fair, demand from the public that this is not that simple, because when it comes to fraud that is material, okay, material misstatement, then fraud or not, that's still part of the auditor's responsibility. Now, we will later on discuss on how and why, the audit procedure, the current audit procedure is not effective to detect fraud. Now, as we discussed earlier, even after the fraud is detected, it is not easy to prosecute the case in the court. Why? One is because we don't have the law that specifically criminalize financial statement fraud, and that's unfortunate. So the sectors that suffer from most financial statement fraud, banking, capital market, they are practically unarmed in this battle, if we can call this battle, okay? Because we don't have the legislation. The government is now working on a new legislation, so they're passing, not passing actually, so they're submitting the bill on the financial reporting law to the DPR, and I think this bill has been discussed for quite a while. I'm not sure how it's progressing, but I think this is a good start. And then also, second things, one of the most frustrating moments for forensic accountant is that when he has to discuss the case with law enforcement agency, or when he has to present, the complexity of accounting issues in front of the court, okay? And unfortunately, this is a serious issue. Our law enforcement are not familiar with accounting and finance and financial fraud. So there were, a lot of situations when I had to spend like the whole day in front of the law enforcement just to explain the difference between, accrual basis of accounting and the cash basis of accounting. And then, in one last case, they insist me to explain about consolidation in the financial statements. And then, when I started explaining about the consolidated balance sheet, and then they start, okay, but I can't comprehend this, so let's just move on. So I think this is our biggest issue, I would say. You don't like what you don't, you don't like what you can't do. So if that's the mindset of our law enforcement, then it's no wonder if we don't have many cases of financial statement fraud in the court. And then the judge also the same. I think even if you manage to explain all these complexities to the law enforcement to the prosecutors, then you still have to face the judge, and you know the situations is not any better as well. And last but not least, fraud is not a street crime where you can use fingerprint as a compelling evidence. Okay, unfortunately, in fraud, evidence is circumstantial in nature. So basically, there is no smoking guns. What has been done by the KPK, where they do, you know, where they do surveillance, they tap your cell phone, and then you know, based on the whistleblowing, and then they do surveillance on you. I think that's not fraud investigations. I'm not saying that that's easy, but once you get the evidence, it's easy for you to bring it in the court because it's a smoking guns. You know, you have all the records, you have all the CCTV and all, but then it's more difficult to prove the case that doesn't have all those luxuries as evidence. Okay, so your evidence will need to be interpreted and need to be relevant with the case. You need to put the evidence in a context, and that's why winning a fraud case in front of a court. So I think it's also another issue. Now, this is going to be my last slide. We've been discussing the issue, and now we need to come up with the solutions. I believe that we need to start with the with building the awareness, the public awareness about financial statement fraud. There should be campaign or public advocacy to educate the public. You know, as you know, as said by my lecturer back in my college days. So this is the biggest homework that we need to complete. And I believe you know, webinars, discussions like this will slowly bring us to this objective, because we need to tell the public that stealing is stealing. You know, no matter you do it from a pocket of somebody or you do it through a financial statement. In financial statement fraud, you steal public's money, you steal investors' money, you steal banks' money. So stealing is stealing. Okay, you steal a theft, even though if you do it through a fancy way like financial statements. And then we also need a strong oversight of the BOD. You may recall the identifications of the case in Garuda was actually initiated by their BOC, and I think we owe them that. You know, that's how it works when you have a strong BOC. So they do the oversight, they do their job, and then when they find issue, then they raise the issue. And then also auditors need to revisit the way they see the data from the auditing. Okay, skepticism is the key. And in many cases of financial statement fraud, you would find that lack of skepticism is one of the root cause. Okay, especially when you do audit on a client for a long time, and then you know it feels like business as usual, and then you tend to take everything for granted here. So I think also they can benefit from fraud risk assessment as a start. I believe we have the audit standard for that. So, but you know, I don't see this implemented too often in audit. So basically, in the standards, you are required to do, you're required to consider fraud risk before you do audit. But then the thing is, how you implement that requirements in your audit. So, in my experience, when I was, you know, from the Big Four that I've been working with, they do assessment, let's say, on the target of the company, the market expectation on the growth of the company, the target of the BOD, and then they would identify if there is a big gap between the target and the existing conditions. And if they think that the bag is too deep, the gap is too big, this means that the fraud risk is imminent. So that's why I think doing fraud risk assessment is very critical. And then, you know, once you identify the risk, then you work the procedures of audit around the result of this fraud risk assessment. And then also, I think the auditors would benefit from the use of data analytics. Okay, data analytics is a powerful tool to enhance the effectiveness of your sampling. You may recall we just discussed that, as auditors, you can identify fraud if the fraud is taken into your sample. Now, what you need to do is enhance or increase the possibility of taking, um, problematic transactions. Okay, so how would you do that? You can do it using forensic data analytics. The forensic data analytics, it helps you stratify the transactions according to their fraud risk. Okay, so but first you have to be familiar with the fraud risk of this particular industry that you're auditing, and then you turn this fraud risk into scenarios, and then you turn the scenarios into script, and then you deploy the script into the database, and then you come up with alerts. Okay, you come up with transactions that may pose the risk in relation to fraud, and then you start your sampling from that list. Would be different from taking samples using random or using other conventional way. And then also, we need to pass the financial reporting bill into law, because if you have read this bill, the bill is actually criminalizing the window dressing. That's in short. Okay, so the government will be establishing a center of repository for financial reporting, and then every company that is eligible for reporting financial statement, they have to report their financial statement into this center of repository, and then if there is any manipulation, if there is any window dressing, there will be there will be penalized, not only using a set administrative sanctions, but also criminal sanctions. Now, also, last but not least, we need forensic accounting, fraud investigations to be taught in police academy and in training centers of our law enforcement agencies. And that's very critical, because what I heard from some of my colleagues in the police department in Polri, they have never received any subject in relation to fraud investigations, let alone forensic accounting. And I think today fraud has been very big issue, and then it's keep revolving. Fraudsters are getting more creative, they're getting smarter, so our law enforcement is need to keep up with this. So also, unfortunately, in Indonesia, it's not common for law enforcement agency to recruit professional accountants or IT experts. I'm not sure how it works in Malaysia or in Singapore, but I think we need to start doing that, because the complexity of the fraud that we are facing today. Well, with that, I will end my presentations. Thank you for listening. Ibu Yunis, back to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Denitama. Such a very enlightening presentation. I enjoy every word of you have shared. Maybe let me highlight several points that you have shared. The first one, financial statement fraud is a low probability but high impact risk, and Indonesia will always be an interesting laboratory to observe, because now Indonesia plays as the one of the high risk country. Every year there will be a new case appeared with a unique background and characteristics. So it is our task to familiarize and to take lessons from each case is done. And in addition to that, in fighting against financial statement fraud, the auditors could not go to the battle alone. They should be equipped with appropriate guns and safeguards in a form of laws and regulations. So thank you very much, Mr. Denny, we will move to the next presentation. But before that, let me inform you several important points. The first one, the e-certificate will be sent via email to each of the participants who have settled the payment process. And the second one, the PPT materials also will be shared via email. Okay, we will move to the third presenter. There will be Mr. Hendy Yogi Prabowo, PhD, a director of Center for Forensic Accounting Studies, Universitas Islam Indonesia. Mr. Hendy earns a bachelor degree from Universitas Islam Indonesia, a master and PhD degree on forensic accounting from University of Wollongong, Australia. He has conducted several cross-country studies on examining the financial crime from the behavioral perspective. And he has published multiple articles in the highly reputable journals internationally. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad to have Mr. Hendy Yogi Prabowo, PhD, to the platform. Good morning, sir. Time is yours.
Good morning. Let me first try to share my material. Okay, let me just hang on. Should be up in the screen by now. All right. Okay, it takes a little bit time. Okay, can you see my material?
Yes.
All right. Okay. So I'll just start right now, yeah. Okay. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you for the moderator, ya, Ibu Yunis, dan also thank you for all the participants and also to the fellow speakers, ya, Prof. Zuraida and Mr. Denny. So as the last speaker, I just want to give another side of a story of the fraud. This is more on what we always see on television every day or mass media every day. It's a story about corruption. So Pak Denny mentioned about explain in detail about the various stories about especially his own experience in investigating financial crime in the form of financial settlement fraud. But there's a number of other types of fraud in Indonesia, and obviously this is the most popular, the most common that people always see every day on media. It is a corruption. But then I want to bring the discussion into another from another perspective. Yeah, this is a perspective of behavioral. So let me first just go to the now. Interesting when Pak Then you mentioned about the lack of understanding about the skill of forensic accounting in Indonesia, which I agree, yeah, which I totally agree that we need more education on forensic accounting because forensic accounting is basically this is my my own experience in studying forensic accounting academically. It forced me to open my my perspective to be as wide as possible, to accept all kinds of knowledge and all kinds of multiple point of view regarding the problem of fraud. And with that, I've had, well, let's just say I fell in love with behavior and culture, which normally are not part of the accounting curriculum. But in forensic accounting, it is a multidisciplinary area. So we need to be able, we need to be ready, we need to be willing, yeah, to open our mind, to absorb and to learn new skills, maybe every day, if we are a practitioner like Pak Denny. But as a start, even the definition can represent how diverse, the areas in forensic accounting is, because this is one of the definition from Professor Larry Crumbly, which this is the picture that I took when actually we met in Malaysia when I visited Prof. Zu, yeah, in 2012, yeah, and then and there's another historical milestone where Maurice Polbet, yeah, wrote an article and he mentioned the term forensic accounting. And there's also this is the most famous, I think, from movie and television. Frank Wilson, one of the CPA working for the American authority dealing with the investigation of Al Capone. Okay, so this is my area of interest, or should I say my area of expertise. It is a behavioral forensic. This is part of the forensic accounting area in which we focus more on human behavior. Behavioral forensic means we focus on human behavior. Now, first, let me just show you a brief illustration of the face of corruption in Indonesia. Everybody knows that corruption is one of the type of the fraud in the country or in the world, based on the study by ACFE, report to the nation. Pak Denny already explained this one. And I'm going to explain more on the corruption side. And this is the face of corruption in Indonesia, the face of fraud in Indonesia from a survey by ACFE Indonesia chapter. Again, corruption becomes a dominant, or maybe at least the most famous type of fraud in the country. Obviously, along with other types of fraud, corruption is the what people say as part of the well, some may disagree, but some will say that this is part of Indonesian culture. But let's talk about it in the next few slides. Now, this is very interesting. Let's talk about, when we talk about culture, we talk about behavior, we talk about people. Let's start with the fact that fraud are committed by smart people. We always say smart people everywhere, but this is another result of the survey from Indonesia, ACFE Indonesia chapter, that the 73.2% of the fraud offender in the country during the survey period has a bachelor degree. So they are all educated people. Some has master, some has doctorate degree. But then we have to see the reality that fraudsters are smart people. That's why, and in relation to Pak Denny's experience when he has to give testimony in the court regarding financial statement, and I can relate that to some of the study. At least there's one study in Australia many years ago, a study that basically the study is trying to see the perspective from judges, hakim, in Australia. Which of the evidence in the court is the most difficult for them to understand? This includes evidence in the areas such as chemistry, kimia, chemistry, IT, some even in medicine. But the number one most difficult evidence to understand by judges in Australia in this study was evidence from accounting discipline. So accounting is arguably the most complex evidence to explain, at least based on this Australian study. So it is important for people to see that this is not just a simple number. See, accounting is not math. It has math inside it, but it's not a simple math. It has some sort of it has its own language. That's why back to this corruption. Actually, if we see some other research that no in one particular crime, or in this case in a crime where fraud happened, there's a big chance that there are also other types of fraud to support the main fraud. So when somebody is doing corruption, to hide the corruption, there might be, people doing financial manipulation or financial statement manipulation to hide the corruption, for example. So fraud is always working in symphony, if I may say. But let's get back to this figure first. This is what we do. This is what we have achieved so far. Corruption Perception Index 2019, 2020. We make slight progress, but it is just, let's say let's admit this is just a perception. It is the best that we can do right now to measure perception. But this slight increase over here is not for us to be, that we can go, we can relax right now, not something like that. So there's still plenty of things to do in the future to make sure that corruption will not become worse. Pak Denny mentioned about fraud triangle, why people commit fraud. I'll continue with fraud element triangle. So this is how people commit fraud. So this is a concealment conversion. Why is normal auditing or financial audit cannot detect fraud? is there's small chance that financial audit can detect fraud, because there's this concealment process. By nature, fraud is concealed, and then frauds need to be enjoyed by way of conversion. So in the middle, there's what we call money laundering as part of the concealment and conversion. So this is how generally, in the perspective of fraud element triangle, fraud is being conducted. This is why fraud is being conducted. This is how it is being conducted. So the face of money laundering is something like this: enjoying, this is what we call as uh, lifestyle, part of the fraud element triangle, buying houses, buying expensive car, jewelry, and everything. Now back to corruption. Now this is the face of corruption from the database of the KPK up until 2021. Up until 2020, from 2004 to 2020. So the majority of the cases fell in the category of bribery. So bribery is very dominant. And then there's offender. We have private sector over here. We have parliament member over here, as two dominant groups of corruption offender. This is again from 2004 to 2020. And yes, this is our perception during the COVID, especially. Corruption, along with other types of fraud, have been considered as increasing, became worse, and Indonesia, 92% of people in Indonesia, based on this study from Transparency International, believe that the problem of corruption is actually getting worse. 92% people think corruption in government is a big problem in the past 12 months or in 2020. So this is another view of it. Well, this is interesting because people want to get better service and then they pay bribery. So this is the perception of people being surveyed by Transparency International. Now this happened. Of course, everybody knows we are still experiencing this. This is still happening right now in 2020. We have COVID-19, and then we are still having the pandemic right now. But this COVID-19 changed pretty much everything in our life. Right now, we're doing this online. This is part of our adaptation to the problem of COVID-19 pandemic. But in terms of anti-fraud practice, when combating fraud, this is what happens. People, practitioner like Pak Denny, for example, or many other practitioners in the area of anti-fraud or fraud investigation, they have to face this kind of challenge. Cannot travel, have to conduct remote interview, and so on, up until maybe some organization may even have funding shortage, so they have to reduce anti-fraud staff, and so on and so on. So this is part of the changes caused by COVID-19 in the area of anti-fraud practice. And then there's also shift in fraud triangle. There's a shift mean there's a new pressure, economic pressure, obviously, because many people lost their job, many organizations had financial pressure, and so on. So this is all becoming more of emerging issues in many organizations and companies, and some are dealing it quite well. Some can innovate and survive. Others, they did not survive and collapse, and some others may think of using fraud to survive, corruption, manipulation of financial statement, and so on. So this is the new pressure that we have, the COVID-19, financial pressure and all kinds of pressure. Pressure is part of the fraud triangle over here. And then with opportunity and rationalization, there's a higher possibility for fraud to happen. Well, everybody knows this. It's becoming a worldwide news. One of our ministers was arrested by the KPK a few months ago because of the alleged involvement in social assistance COVID-19 aid. And I wrote an article about this myself. Because what happened inside of the ministries or government institution where corruption happened. In my article, I mentioned, well, we cannot deny there are some cultural factors in addition to training, limited training, regulatory limitation, and so on, that basically hinders supervisors from performing their tests. So internal control did not work because of various factors. One of them are cultural and behavioral factors. So how to cure corruption? It's like a disease, we need to cure it. Because, well, the best option would be to prevent it, because it's always best to prevent a disease than to cure it. But then it's already here, it's already infecting the nation. So we need to think about how to cure corruption. We've had many activities with regard to anti-corruption. We had events, we had education and so on, and we have all kinds of activity, including this one is the most prominent activity: investigation and prosecution. And but then it's still here. In 2019, there are I don't have the 2020 yet, but in 2019, these are how many sting operation, we call it OTT, operasi tangkap tangan, happened in Indonesia. Yeah, but then investigation is also conducted extensively from 2004 to 2020. Hundreds of people have been prosecuted, but well, only in Indonesia, corruptor can always smile like a celebrity. This is what people say. This is a long time ago in 2015, but it is still interesting for us to see. What happened here is like an analogy of Hercules versus Hydra. If you ever watch a movie or read about the Greek mythology, or you obviously know about the character named Hercules, the strongest man in the world, but he had one enemy called the Hydra, the snake with many heads. The problem with when he faced Hydra, it was not an easy task. When Hercules faced Hydra, it's not an easy task, because Hydra, when he cut one of the head of the Hydra, there are always two heads growing. So this is an analogy of fighting corruption in Indonesia. We cut one, we arrest one, and then the next year, maybe, or maybe less than 1 year, other people from the same department or from the same institution or from the same area of profession are being arrested again for corruption. So it's like fighting Hydra. There's no end to it. Even Hercules will have difficulty killing this Hydra. But he had assistant. He had assistant from, in this case, from his friend, his cousin. And what he did was helping Hercules to prevent the head from growing back. So how to stop the regeneration of the head? That is the key of Hercules' victory against Hydra. And that is also a lesson that we can learn from here. Corruption is like a Hydra. It has many heads, and when we cut one head, two or maybe more will appear and will grow and makes the problem becomes more severe. Now let us see why corruption regenerates. Well, first, nobody was born as fraudsters. Nobody was born as manipulators. Nobody was born as corruptor or fraudsters, because criminal behavior is learned. This is one of the classic book that I learned during my study. Sutherland, the mentor of Donald Cressy. Criminal behavior is learned through interaction and then intimate personal group, including the technique, direction, motive, rationalization, justification, and everything, all come from the learning process. Nobody was born as a bad person. Everybody was actually born as a good person. But then it's through interaction, through our meeting with other people, that we start to develop our personality. We start to learn. We start to have our mindset being developed, and eventually, it will decide whether or not we're going to be a good person or a bad person. Okay, how do we stop the regeneration of corruption? Because the learning process is always there. When a person is being arrested by the KPK, for example, and then is being taken out from one institution, replaced by another person, as long as the learning process is still there, the learning process of corruption, for example, or of fraud in general, is still there, there will always be problem again in the future with regard to fraud, especially corruption. So how do we stop the regeneration? How do we stop it? We need to admit that corruption is socially constructed. The word corruption is known worldwide. Everybody knows corruption, but then the color of corruption is different in every country because, well, we have this. I'll just quote one of my favorite expert in here, Hofstede. Culture represents quality programming of the mind. Our minds are different from the mind of people in other country. Sorry. If I have to go, if I have to go deeper, then let us see the breakdown of our culture. This is cultural dimension of Indonesia. We have high power distance here and high collectivism, low individualism and high collectivism. So this is what makes us us. This is not about positive or negative. This is our characteristic. This is why we cannot just simply copy and paste corruption prevention from other country. Let's see. Oh, America is doing well, or Australia is doing well. Let's just copy and paste their prevention measure. No, we cannot, because the people are different, the culture are different, our cultural dimensions are different. For example, in Australia, individualism is high, power distance is low. So whistleblowing system works very well over there because people can report other people without reluctancy. What is it in language? We call it pakewo here, Javanese language. People just report other people in whistleblowing system because they have high individualism. They only care about the damage that other people can cause to the organization because of his or her fraud. Here in our country, it is different, totally different. Hierarchy is important. We have to respect our superior. That is good. That is very, very good. But then there's a limit to that. That's why I show you my opinion in that newspaper, right? Internal control. Internal control is part of the organization. They have to answer to the superior of the organization. What if the superiors themselves are doing fraud? So this is why I show you this. This is more or less. This is us. We cannot. How do we change this? No, we cannot. It takes, I don't know, millions of years to change this, but we can manage this. Turn at the top is extremely important here. Not just very, but extremely important here. Whatever the leaders say, follower will follow, most likely. We have togetherness, kebersamaan, we consciousness, which is very positive. But then if we consciousness is being misused for supporting fraud, that becomes a problem for the organization. Harmony should always be maintained. Harmony should always be maintained, meaning we value harmony very much. It is positive, it becomes a driver of productivity, but then when it exceeds its limit, it becomes a big problem as well. For example, whistleblowing system will not work. Internal control will not work. Relationship prevail over task. Literally with harmony, we value everything based on whether or not we please other people, we make other people happy or not. Is it good or is it bad? Both. It can be good, it can be bad, depending on how we manage it. So we cannot say that Australian culture is better than Indonesian culture, or Indonesian culture is better than American culture. No, every culture has its own challenge against fraud when it comes to culture and behavior. I like this type of. I know this is not the most. I know this is not the perfect, the best. I think this is the best we can do right now. There are so many weaknesses in this model. I know, from academic perspective, but this is I think this is a brilliant idea. Many people can take advantage of this kind of knowledge. Auditor, for example, when they want to decide, a financial auditor, when they want to decide how much resources that they want to bring into the into an organization that they're going to audit, they need to consider this kind of thing. In Japan, for example, it takes more effort to audit disclosure. Why? Because Japan, just like Indonesia, is high collectivism. In high collectivistic country, disclosure is always minimum. Well, most likely minimum. Why? Because people don't like to disclose things to people that they consider as what? External people, outsiders. And this is also a challenge for researchers like all of us, like me, for example. In Indonesia, let me show you, let me just give you an example. When I did my own PhD many years ago, in another lifetime, it took me 9 months. 9 months to gather data about financial fraud in Indonesia. It took me 1 day to gather the same data in Australia. See, 1 month versus 9 months versus 1 day. Why? Because, well, this is the effect of our culture dimension. In a highly activistic country like us, we always treat outsider more, not cruel, yeah, but then we always put barrier between us and what people that we consider as outsider. So when they come to us to ask for data, we will most likely have resistance, or we will most likely have some kind of a reluctancy to provide data, which I found it not happening in Australia, for example. I came to one institution, I was expecting confidentiality and everything because I'm asking data about financial fraud uh, in that association, industry association, and to my surprise, they just gave me that data, and that made me speechless. What I said to them, really? You give me this data just like that? And they say, yeah, why not? Well, I thought you're going to ask me, I thought you're going to, treat this as confidential and everything. And they say, no, there's nothing confidential. We want people to know this data as well. We want people to be educated about incidents of fraud in the country. So that's how different culture, different people, different sets of fraud problem, different types of corruption as well. This one, for example, another example in Indonesia from a survey Fraud Indonesia 2019 by ACFB Indonesia chapter. Number one, most prominent, most noticeable problem with regard to internal control is we call it sikap atasan, tone at the top. Yeah, tone at the top. But let's say compare this with report to the nation global. Tone at the top is not number one, but this one is number one. So that basically relates to here. Yeah, to the top strongly influence organizational culture and behavior. Whatever the leader do, followers will follow. Sometimes without questions. And interestingly also that 36% of the fraud in Indonesia are conducted by four people or more. We call it fraud berjamaah ya. Or fraud berkelompok ya. It is more common in Indonesia to see people doing things in group for good and for bad. For good means gotong royong and everything. For bad means doing fraud together or doing corruption together. So there's this limit. There's this anything that exceeds its limit is always bad. Even togetherness, yeah, even collectivism. Now, why fraud degenerates? This is education in a bad way. In a company, in an organization, or in an entity where fraud is very, very common over here, any new member of organization will be educated in a post-trope, yeah, and be educated to accept what we call as corruption to be normalized. So this is what we call as normalization of corruption. And what I think I remember Pak Dennis mentioned about we're doing this because this is for the people, for the sake of the people in the organization, because otherwise they will lose their job, for example. This is what we call as refocusing attention. People are being educated to accept fraud or corruption as part of the daily life. One of them is by introducing to multiple types of rationalization. These are the most common types. Yeah, there are so many so many other rationalization, but these are the common types. We have denial of legality, denial of responsibility, injury victims, social weighting, meaning that when people are asked, why do you commit fraud? Well, he will just answer, well, I commit fraud, but look at other people. They're committing more fraud than me. Try to see and show that there are other people committing worse things than what he has done. Loyalty, yes, as the title suggests, there are value in life. Culture consists of many value. What we consider as important in our life, that's value. Which one is higher, loyalty or fairness, for example? Some may consider loyalty, especially those in collectivistic culture like Indonesia. That's why appeal to high loyalty has often been identified as the major type of rationalization in country like Indonesia or Asia in general. Or this one, metaphor of the ledger, why you commit fraud? And the person will answer, I worked in this company for many, many years, but they did not reward me enough. So I just take whatever I believe as mine, even without the consent or the permission of the company, stealing, for example. Now, this is what we call as normalization. How to educate in a bad way, people to accept fraud, in this case, to accept corruption. These are just supporting elements of this bad education to institutionalize, to make it as part of the institution, and socialize, to make it part of the social interaction. Yeah. And how do we deal with this? Is this all the problem? How do we deal with this? This is our challenge. How do we prevent through education? Well, first thing first, yeah. This is hard to reverse. This normalization, once it happens, it will stay for a very, very long time. Simply preaching memberi ceramah, ya, will not change anything. Somebody preach. Okay, there's one interesting experience that I had when one day, several years ago, I went to a Semarang at that time, and there's an event. As a researcher, I want to see what the event is, and it was a socialization of anti-fraud commitment by the government of Central Java, the governor, and there's also obviously KPK as the co-host of the event, and I was there to observe. I just want to see as a researcher what happened, and it's interesting that when the speech is being given, everybody is paying attention, and then take photos one by one, all the heads of the city and regency, and just within months, one of them being arrested for corruption. So that's the thing. Preaching or just telling people to stop doing this corruption or fraud will not actually change anything. So what do we do? When normalization happen, we need to think about other strategy to prevent, to cure corruption. First, what happened here will reside in here. It becomes organizational knowledge. I always see organization as a group, as an accumulation of knowledge, not just accumulation of people or technology, but knowledge, because knowledge is going to last maybe forever. Yeah, people will not. People will disappear one day, but knowledge will be there forever. So when knowledge has been developed, there are two types of knowledge. We have the explicit one and the tacit one. Explicit are especially those that we can see directly with our eyes, documents, file, data, and everything. And then there's tacit. Tacit are those that we cannot easily see with our eyes. Value, myth, kepercayaan, innovation, creativity, and so on. Those are component of the knowledge that we cannot see easily with our senses, indera pendengar, indera manusia, ya. But based on many research, tacit actually constitute the most in deciding the characteristic of the organization and the people within the organization. Some experts say it constitutes 95% of the characteristic of organization, the tacit, and explicit only constitute 5%. So when anti-fraud practice target only the explicit side of the knowledge, most likely it will not create any change. That's why many times OTT or sting operation by the KPK happen in the same organizations multiple times. So what happened? What happened was there's no change in tacit knowledge of the organization. Remember, this is collectivistic. We are in a collectivistic culture. Our organization knowledge will become our individual knowledge because we are very, very dependent on our group in our country. So when tacit knowledge is still bad, we cannot expect changes to happen. It doesn't matter what we do. Fraud investigation, OTT, sting operation, it will only change only slightly, most likely on the explicit side of the knowledge. The rule is being changed, the SOP is being changed, internal control procedure are being changed. But then value, creativity, perception, myth, for example, are still the same. All of those contribute to the acceptance of corrupt act as part of the daily life of the organization. What do? We learn, but extraordinary learning. We call it transformative learning. Not just learning in the sense that we teach and they listen. No, learning that basically change the mindset. Yeah, this is something. This is not really new. This has been discussed for decades. Yeah, transformative learning. We change the attitude, we change the mindset, we change everything, and then eventually we make people better. You know, and for that, there's some step that we need to do. I don't think this is. I don't think I have enough time to explain this, but this is a very different type of learning. Now, this is my favorite expert in the world, Yoda. Yeah, everybody, if you know Star Wars, then this is one of my favorite expert in the world. When I first listened to this quote, I was still very young. I was still a child. I didn't care about what I just thought that this little guy is very cool, yeah, because he's very powerful. But then many years after that, when I'm already an adult, I realized this has deeper meaning than just simply a quote from the movie. This is what we call as unlearning. You must unlearn what you have learned. Yeah. Sometimes you have to do this. Sometimes we have to learn. Sometimes we have to unlearn, to forget. That's why we have. Sometimes we have to learn. Sometimes we have to forget by design. Yeah. You must unlearn what you have learned. So there's organizational unlearning over here. Sometimes we have to let go of some knowledge that we consider as being, destructive or bad. Yeah, because we need to adopt new knowledge. Sometimes new knowledge cannot be adopted when the old knowledge is still there. Yeah. Innovation can only be triggered by changes of knowledge. Yeah. That is one of the opinion, yeah, from many experts. Yeah, and then uh, I think we need to. Okay, now how do we start unlearning? How do we start forgetting? Yeah, we've been studying for many years how to learn, but have we ever studied how to forget? Because we always thought forgetting is natural. No, it is not. It can be in some small cases, but in big cases, forgetting can be a difficult task for us to do. Unlearning, the term here used is unlearning. How do we unlearn? First, we need to trigger what we call as discernment process within organization. Well, okay, the best example of discernment is if we give a what we call as shock therapy. What are the examples? Well, a long time ago, long time ago, in another lifetime, OTT by KPK was very scary, isn't it? Long time ago. It can create discernment, a shock therapy, but I don't think the effect is as big as it is today, right? We only see it as like a daily routine, like almost like, we can see that kind of thing on television almost every day. So discernment is actually a process that causes personal growth, that make a person, or in this case an organization, and the person within the organization to question themselves. See, is the process where people in the organization have the willingness to discuss with themselves. So discussing with oneself, that is the key. So they have to start questioning. Maybe what we have done so far was wrong. Maybe what we did so far is wrong. Maybe we're not doing this correctly. Maybe we should change. That is the symptoms of discernment. And discernment is not something that we can see easily, but it is the key to unlearning. And unlearning is the key to transformative learning. And transformative learning is the best way, to me, one of the best way to change organizational knowledge, so that an organization will be more resistant to fraud, especially corruption. I'm sorry, I'm going back and forth. I hope I'm not making you dizzy. So this is the key. How do we trigger discernment? Well, there are so many ways. I'm not going to explain details, but it has to go through personal interaction. We cannot just preaching is not going to help us in this case. Preaching means menceramahi. There are many times when we see people being lectured about anti-fraud and everything, but then after a while they just forget about it, and fraud is still there. So, okay, one more thing. We cannot. This is this is all part of the education, but it's a different kind of education to what we do to our students in university, at least for bachelor degree, because in high school, bachelor degree, for example, we consider students as not yet an adult, almost for undergraduate student, almost an adult. But we apply, usually for schools, we apply children education. Here, we talk about adult education. These are two types of education, very, very different. Now, the funny thing is we always apply children education to educate adults. Preaching, yelling at, being very scolded, scolded means diomeli, and try to force our opinion to them. It only work for children, not for adults. So that's the mistake here. We apply incorrect principles of education to change the mindset of the people to basically to solve the corruption problem. That's why corruption problem and fraud in general are still here in Indonesia. So this German, and this is not something else, this is real, this is concrete. If we see, this is 1988, and there have been many methods developed in other countries about how to do unlearning in organization, how to do transformative learning, and more specifically, how to stimulate discernment. So it's a difficult term, I know, but it is a key to initiate unlearning and to initiate transformative learning. So when we are successfully doing transformative learning, this is what we're going to achieve: wisdom. An organization, again, I always view organization as an accumulation of knowledge, not just accumulation of people or technology or infrastructure. No, organization is accumulation of knowledge. What kind of knowledge? Because knowledge is only here, but there's a high level of knowledge. It's called wisdom for organization. Organization that is resistant to fraud and corruption are organization that already achieve wisdom. This is my last slide. So I'm going to close this with this. Let's think about, have our organization achieved wisdom or it is only knowledge? This is the basic data, information, but then there's knowledge. Have we achieved here? Because when we achieve here, we will consider ethical, the right and wrong more, thoroughly, more deeply. Simply not just simply following regulation, but whether or not what we are doing is giving benefit or creating problem, or is it right or wrong in a very, very, in a deeper meanings. Yeah. So this is organizational wisdom. So this is my the end of my presentation. Let me close it with a quote from T.S. Eliot. Where is the wisdom we have lost in knowledge? Where is the knowledge we have lost in information? Thank you very much. I return the forum to Ibu Yunis. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Mr. Hendy Yogi Prabowo, for the enlightenment. Let me highlight several points. The first one, clearly from his presentation, we have known that cultural and behavioral factors are allocating to the or contributing to the expansion of financial crime. And the quote is that nobody or no one is born to be fraudster. They are learned or they are grown through the systemic learning process, through the interaction. So Mr. Handy proposed transformative learning and organizational learning to elevate the required for fighting the fund. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are now we will move to the question and answer session. But before that, let me select several participants to raise the question. Okay, I will read the question from the chat box. We will start from 3 selected questions first. The first one is for Professor Zuraida from Eko Rahman Setiawan. Is there any potential fraud in the implementation of national health insurance? And is there any fraud prevention program run by the Malaysian government? Okay, so That's the first question for Prof. Zuraida, and the second one for Mr. Denny Tama. Earlier, it was explained that the implementation of audit is only 4% able to detect the fraud. What detection activities should the internal audit do in order to effectively find the fraud or in order to improve the numbers? And the third one, it's for Mr. Hendy Yogi Pabowo. Okay, this is from AM Bagus Panca. Looking through the motive of fraud, how the normalization of corruption can implement effectively if the situation is still lack of open chance, poor commitment, and poor quality of internal control. Okay, so maybe I would like to please Prof. Zuraida to address the first question. Time is yours, Prof.
Okay, all right, thank you, Eunice. With regard to the question, obviously when it comes to any new system or in this case the question is on the national insurance, obviously that is another opportunity kan. In Malaysia, from last time with the national insurance, maybe the system will be different with Indonesia, but whatever that we have, obviously one of the type of fraud involved is on the insurance. So they have their own department that really need to do the investigation on the claim, on the bogus claim or purposely having many ways lah. They want to claim the insurance, and the amount of coverage is quite a lot. So there are a lot of incentive to do so. So that is a normal apa orang kata. But with the new system now in Malaysia, most transaction must have your own identity card with the chip. I mean, in the card there is a chip, right? So you have to show whatever with that card. Last time, I mean, of course you show your identity card, but now there is a machine that you have to put the identity card with you. So with that, become I guess quite difficult to do so unless macam Pak Dr. Hendy sebut just now, rasuah berkelompok bersama-sama. Maybe that one can be done lah. If it is individual, maybe it could be quite difficult. Okay, can I share a little bit while answering this question on the to answer the question on what that Malaysia has done. This is they call it National Anti-Corruption Plan 2019-2023. So there are many new strategies. I'm talking about 6 strategies, 17 strategic objectives, 115 initiatives. This is really new initiatives. Kalau siapa yang berminat, you can always download in website Malaysia. You just write on the National Anti-Corruption Plan 2019-2023, very detailed on saying what that Malaysia has done. And because of maksudnya very detailed tu, you can nampak kat sini like what kind of strategy, what is the detailed initiative, and what department will do that. Not only walaupun nama dia corruption, tapi bukannya anti-corruption agency sahaja yang buat. Anti-corruption agency maybe buat hanya 12 initiative. The rest tu is other agency lah. So that is so it's a good buku ni. So you can see this is new thing. New tu maksudnya new initiatives. If they have done it 2018 pun dia tak masukkan dalam ni. Sedangkan in 2018, like I said tadi, every department must have integrity unit, for example. That one tu dah gazetted before that, therefore dia tak masukkan. So this is a lot of initiative. Because of this initiative, they said also naiknya, kalau I tukar sebelah, boleh nampak tak? Can you see this slide now? Transparency on corruption perception.
Yes,
boleh?
yes.
Okay. So because of that, katanya naiklah sikit Malaysia punya score tu, better lah, something like that lah ya. So I want to share also satu lagi, banyak index kat dunia ni kan, tapi we have to understand that. So this is called Legatum Prosperity Index, yang mana Malaysia in 2030 also we'll look into kesejahteraan, dia panggil kesejahteraan prosperity. Dalam tu ada 3 main index, main domain. And the first one tu is about social inclusiveness. Maknanya selamat atau tak selamat lah duduk di muka bumi Malaysia atau muka bumi Indonesia. So dekat sini pun ada index kat sini kan, kita nampak ada 3 domain warna, 3 warna. You can also nampak Indonesia tu, I'm quite surprised walaupun you all are ranking 57, yang kuning-kuning tu maknanya belum kadar yang lebih baik lah kalau hijau, tapi Indonesia dahsyat, dia ada warna hijau. Warna hijau ni is on, tak silap, this is on social capital, one of the, dia panggil one of the element dalam domain yang social inclusiveness. Walaupun mungkin ada yang warna orange and so on, tapi Indonesia dia sangat kuat lah social capital. That one memang I agree, I 100% agree. I've been many times to Indonesia. This is something yang saya sangat kagumkan on Indonesia lah, on the social capital ni. Banyak on social. So you can also kalau nampak kat sini Japan, for example, yang negara hijau-hijau ni negara yang sangat sejahtera lah, memang sedap lah. That's why kalau you pergi kat negara tu pun you feel so comfortable ya. Because dia memang banyak benda dia dah ambil lah, dia dah take care many things. Tapi I nak share satu on Japan. You nampak Japan? Japan memang not bad. Dia banyak warna hijau kat sini. Maknanya dia very good. Tapi when come tadi Indonesia yang sangat hijau, Japan social capital dia agaknya dia agak apa ya, individualistic kan. Dia bukan individualistic, dia agak that mesti kerja kan, so not so much on that development of the social capital tu. So Japan merah lah, is quite salah satu yang agak memeranjatkan saya lah. So that is to answer the question perhaps on how that we can look at on the combating financial crime ni. Dia banyak from many angle, and this is a prosperity index also, keselamatan on the financial crime issue di dalam segmen yang warna ni lah, social inclusiveness ni. Yang ni on the economy, yang ni on the environment, education, capital. So this is a good thing as well for those yang dalam platform hari ini. This should be something yang you boleh tengok, not only on the corruption index, but also other things lah. Yang lain ni tak apa, ni nanti I akan bagi tahu juga for other questions. Sebab tadi I can read also the question yang lain tu. So let me stop dulu. Okay, Yanis, I pass back to you.
Thank you very much, Prof, for the answers. Maybe we will move to the next speakers, Mr. Denny.
Yeah, thank you, Ibu Yunis.
Okay, please.
So the question was how the internal audit can contribute in detecting fraud, right? So I believe, when it comes to audit, the capability to detect fraud is actually embedded in the procedures that you're conducting when you're doing audit. Okay, so the reason why external auditors rarely detect fraud is because it is not embedded in their procedures. So you may want to start with embedding the fraud detection in your internal audit procedures, and then you can also use additional tools, because I've already mentioned that data analytics is the newly used tools in audit, and it's very effective. And I believe that it helps a lot. In my daily job in EY, when we're doing investigations or fraud detections, I think 80% of the fraud detections that we've done were actually using FDA, forensic data analytics, and I think that can be also done by the company. So it is not, you don't have to come up with a very sophisticated tools in data analytics. If you can use SQL, even if you can use Excel, what you need is actually understanding of your business and the understanding of fraud scenarios. You have to think from the perspective of a fraudster, so that you can come up with creative scenario, and then only by then you will be able to detect fraud, because you won't find anything that you're not looking for. Okay, so you need to embed that in your audit procedures. I think that's my comment, Ibu Yunis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Denny. I hope it answers the question. And we'll go to Mr. Handy for the third question, please.
Okay, thank you. So the question is about the normalization of corruption. So let me just share one more. I have this I have this habit here. Whenever I prepare material for my speech, I always have more slides than what I show to the audience. Some of the slides are being hidden, so I kind of expect some question and then I try to make some slide to help me to answer the question. So this is one of the prediction of my sorry, this is the prediction that came true. Yet somebody asked me about normalization. What do we do about it? So this is the slide that I've been hiding. So I just show it to you now. This is something that I've written, in an academic journal. Denormalization. So normalization versus denormalization, because one normalization happen, it will stay there for maybe forever, yeah, if we don't do anything. So what we need to do is a systematic denormalization. We denormalize. That's why we have something like this. We have transformative learning. Part of the denormalization is transformative learning. We cannot just simply expect this to change without actually doing something extraordinary. So normalization is bad. Normalization of corruption here is a problem that happens everywhere, especially in Indonesia. That's why corruption persists. That's why corruption is still here. So when this happen, we need to denormalize. We need to, like a river, when it is being clogged by garbage and everything, it becomes stuck and there's flood everywhere. So we need to denormalize, like we denormalize a river, for example. We need to clean all these bad elements in our organization knowledge. And how do we do that? That's going to be a very long discussion. But the thing is, we have to realize that first we need to accept that we are wrong. We have to accept that we've been doing things in the wrong direction in all this time. That's why I emphasize on discernment. Discernment means we realize that we are wrong. If we never realize this, there's nothing's going to happen. Even though this is not everything, this is the starting point of denormalization. The starting after that, then we can do all kinds of procedure for that. Then the question is, what happened if internal control is weak? What happened if the environment is not supportive? That is the result of normalization. The result of normalization will have impacts on various aspects of organization, like weak internal control, small opportunity for changes and everything. This will cause all kinds of problems in the organization, not just for corruption, but also for growth and development. Maybe like Prof. Zuraida mentioned, maybe social capital will also be diminishing and everything. So how do we do that? Well, question number one is, how do we stimulate discernment? Is a big question, is a big task, is a big jump, because sometimes the denial is so strong that we don't realize that we are wrong in the organization. But how do we know that we have been wrong so far? There is no exact science for that. Let me give you one example. We are in social science here. But even in medical science, let's say kedokteran, medicine, in medical science, when a new invention, a new a new method or a new research is revealing that the old way of treating patient is dangerous for the patient. I read this from many journal in the academic and in the world of medicine, that even during the time when a new discovery is made from the research, and the discovery suggests that the previous way of treating patients are dangerous for the patients, many doctors do not immediately change the way they treat patients. And this is, of course, this is very, 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 very serious problem. I'm not an expert in medicine, but I read this from many medicine journal. That happened even in the world of medicine, where the life of people are at stake. Changes are not automatically happen just because we find something from our past experience, something that suggests that we have done something incorrectly. It needs to be initiated. It needs to be carried out properly, so changes actually happen. And this is the key to trigger that changes, to make people in the organization realize that they have been doing things incorrectly, and everything will start to change after that. This is the most difficult part, actually. This is the most difficult, like rebooting our mind, which is not easy as well, because our minds are not computer, not mobile phone. We can reboot our computer quite easily, or mobile phone. If we want to reboot our mobile phone, we can just bring it to a service center and they will reboot our mobile phone. But this is our brain. We cannot just simply rebooting it. We have to go through some mental process that will stimulate our willingness to realize that we are wrong so far. When that happens, everything will be open for changes. I know this sounds very philosophical, but if you read many articles about organizational knowledge, there have been many methods developed to change many organizations all around the world to be better, simply by initiating discernment. Well, it's a long discussion, so hopefully this will satisfy your curiosity. Thank you. So I return the forum to Bu Yunis. Thank you, Bu Yunis.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Yogi Pabo, for the answer. We will open the second session because there are many curiosity from the audience. So I will raise 3 more questions. The first one to Mr. Denny from Bapak Agus Ketarto. Besides strengthening BOC or audit committee oversight to prevent reporting fraud or financial statement fraud, in the light of the banking industry, could we also expect from the role of anti-fraud unit that must be established according to OJK regulation? So, do we have to establish anti-fraud unit as proposed by the OJK regulation? And the second question goes to Prof. Zuraida from Fianto News. Is there an investigation standard? He means the accounting standard from Malaysian Institute of Certified Public Accountant. Can we say that investigation is an assurance service? What do you think? And the third one goes to Mr. Hendy Yogi Prabowo from Anna Mariana. I envisage corruption, particularly in the public service, as a risk arising from agency relationship between the public servant and the public. Do you have any suggestion to improve the monitoring from the public to decrease the risk of corruption in the public sectors? Okay, so I will hand over the platform to the speakers. The first one, maybe I will go to Mr. Denny. Would you please to address the question? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Ibu Yunis. It's a good question, actually, Pak Agus. So it would depend on a number of factors. One is the scope of the anti-fraud, because I think OJK regulations on anti-fraud is quite general, and in some banks, the anti-fraud is sitting at the third line of defense, which is part of the internal audit, and in other banks, it's sitting in the second line of defense, mostly under the compliance or risk. So if you want to cover the overall fraud of the banking industry, I think it's quite hard. So that's why the model that has been used by many global banks is that you have two set of anti-fraud unit. One is taking care of the internal fraud, major fraud, fraud related to criminal, which involve internal parties, and then the other one is fraud related to customers. So I think you can always rely on the anti-fraud functions in bank as long as they cover the broader range of fraud. And then secondly, also depends on their independence. Okay, if the fraud functions is sitting under the internal audit, then I think we can ensure their independence. Only we have one other problem. If it's sitting under the internal audit, meaning that it cannot be audited internally. Well, ideally, the anti-fraud unit need to be able to be audited, because they have to have the accountability and they need to be reviewed and all. So that's also another dilemma. But I think the OJK regulations requires the bank to have the anti-fraud unit that has a direct reporting line to CEO, and then also a dotted reporting line to the commissioner. So now I think that's settled. So if you have that unit under the CEO, having a direct dotted line to the commissioner, then the scope is there. The independence, I would presume it's adequate. Now it leaves us with the third factor, which is the competency and also the equipment. So as long as the unit is resourced with the competence people, and also they have access to the required tools, then I think they would be able to tackle the job of the to mitigate the fraud risk within the bank. I think that's my comment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Daniel, for the answers.
Thank you.
I would like to please Mr. Hendiogi Prabowo to address the second question.
Okay, thank you. Let me just share again something. Okay, I should be up by now. Okay, sorry. Now, this is something that actually, interestingly, this is something that, oh, sorry. Oops, sorry. It's not up yet. Okay, I just want to share another one of my academic writing, or my article that I wrote. This one. This one, well, this one has, why is it not moving? Hang on. This one has Prof. Zuraida too here. How to how to promote monitoring by public. Well, we have many ways to do that. One of the way is that we are a social media nation. Social media is now, well, basically everywhere. I think we are one of the largest social media country in the world. Believe it or not, the number of the social media account already exceeds our population. So we are crazy about social media. Usually we do this for fun, entertainment, but we can also do this. You use this for some positive purposes, like monitoring everything, society, monitoring various issues in the society, including the issues regarding anti-corruption and everything. So if we can use this properly, then we can also, if we can use this for leisure and for entertainment, we can also use this for productive purposes, like establishing public monitoring of governance practices by government institution, for example. Of course, there are limitations for this, but then there are also research and publication and everything. I know that I noticed because I'm supporting several activities regarding the management of academic journal. Yeah, I noticed some of the government institution already. Well, at least I know two of them had their own academic journal. I know there's a journal by the KPK and there's journal by the BPK. If the research is another way of informing people about what happened in the society and especially what happened with regard to governance. But the easiest way is always social media, to me at least. Many people will have other alternative way, but the easiest, cheapest, quickest way would be to monitor our social media. So social media is very rich of data, yeah, that we can find, that we can use. There are many, if we properly use this as in data mining. Sorry, I just put some note here. There are millions of information in social media that we can use to identify if there are even the slightest indication of the problem with regard to governance practices in some institutions or some government institutions. For example, usually before the events of OTT by KPK, if we look back at some of the previous or the posts in the social media, like my favorite one is Twitter because it's short. We can find a number of people already mentioning about misconduct in that organization. Because social media has anonymity. Anonymity creates confidence by the user. It could be bad, it could be good. Bad means we have some hoax news, for example, that also comes from social media. But there are also some positive purpose of social media, like spreading information about all kinds of issues in the society. So there are many ways for us to establish public monitoring, but my favorite one is to optimize social media and analyzing, using data mining, using big data in social media to analyze various current issues that happens in the country. I think that's all from me, Ibu Yunis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Handy, for the answers. We will go to the next question. I would like to please Prof. Zubaida to answer the question.
Okay. I I answer the question by sharing what that Malaysia has done. Boleh nampak ke ni, Yunis?
Yes, Prof.
Alright. So I think I highlight terus lah ya to answer the question. One is on the standard that relevant. I think this is all, international standard that Malaysia has recently updated it in January 2020, that to make sure that auditors' responsibilities relating to fraud in an audit of financial statement. So dalam ni also talk about how the auditor must have the competencies actually. Not that easy. Of course, the responsibility of the management to make sure to be responsible for the fraud, but the auditor himself need to go to do many things to make sure that they are able to detect the fraud, and be responsible to report the material misstatement, all right. And also as the ini untuk individual auditor, but for the organizational level, in which that the body that govern the audit quality will call as Audit Oversight Board under Security Market. So they keep issuing the report, and this is where they one of their report lah, in fostering high quality independent auditing ni. I just want to show you that what that they have done, and they really disclosed it. What that from their ni macam orang kata apa, audit the auditors. So macam kalau di US tu PCAOB lah. I dulu macam I tahu, tapi now I cannot remember for your apa Indonesia punya ni. Maybe Dr.
What is it?
For the AOB in Indonesia, in Malaysia AOB, in US PCAOB kan.
AOB is what?
Audit Oversight Board. That means the body that govern the audit firms that audit the public listed company.
I think it's P2PK, the Ministry of Finance in Indonesia.
Yeah, Ministry of Finance.
So straight away under the Ministry of Finance, not like independent. Yeah, okay. So so this is their report, and they disclose lah where is it? This one. Oops. So that means what that they have reminded or they reprimanded, and also the provision for the auditors, maknanya tadi dia check the audit firm. So this is the report lah. So apa tindakan yang dia buat kepada audit firm tu. So that I can share. Okay, Ibu Yunis.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Zubaida, for answering the question. So due to the time constraint, actually we have, I believe we all enjoyed the fruitful discussion during this webinar, but maybe I will give the last chance to raise a question to Irendinia, which has raised the hand. Mbak Iren Anggadewi, would you please to activate your mic? Mbak Iren? Oh, okay, maybe losing the signal. Okay, so I'm so sorry for that, but due to the time constraint, maybe I would like to thank all of the speakers for sharing the experience, knowledge, and valuable insights to all of the audience. It is such a great pleasure to be a moderator in this webinar. We hope to see you virtually or virtually or real life. Okay, so on behalf of the committee, I would like to apologize for any shortcomings during this webinar. And maybe I'd like to remind several points. The first one, the PPT materials of each speaker will be sent to email for to all of the respondents, to all of the participants. Certificate will also be sent to email for those who have settled the payment process. And for the members of EAE, I would like to remind you to send an email with the attachment of the certificate of this webinar to eaejogja@yahoo.com with the subject of Certificate of International Webinar on Forensic Accounting. And please don't forget to mention your EAE account email address. By doing so, you don't need to upload your certificate in the website of EAE Launch. So once again, thank you very much for all the participants and speakers for allocating the time to this webinar. And maybe I would like to conclude with one statement. Financial crime will always be a problem or matters to our nation unless we, all of us, take a step in, have a awareness and willingness to improve our competency to cut off the devil chain in the financial crime. So I would like to hand over the platform to the MC, Mbak Adel. Time is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Yunicha. All right, ladies and gentlemen, finally we get to the last session on this event that is closing. As the master of ceremony, thanks to Professor Zuraida as the speaker, also Mr. Denny Ertama and Mr. Hendy Yogi, and for all the participants who attend this event. May what we had conducted will be used for us. If in guiding this event, I made many mistakes or offend someone here, please forgive me. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Ada grup fotonya? Grup foto.
Yes. Anyone wants to make group photo?
Ya. Bukan senang saya nak pergi Jogja.
Yes, please. Maybe all the participants, please, open their camera.
Okay, I will take the photo. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Slide 1 finish. Slide 2.
Ramai betul ya hadir. 16 muka surat ni. 450 tadi.
Okay. Slide 3. Okay. Slide 4. Next slide. Okay. Slide 6.
Thank you for everyone.
Okay, insyaAllah jumpa lagi.
Johor. Johor. Apa di Sungai Wang.
Okay, the photo is finished.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Mbak Adel, saya mohon izin live.
Oke.
Terima kasih.
Dapatkah kamu bayangkan?
Terima kasih Pak Denny.
Pendidikan tinggi di Indonesia ini adalah kampusmu di masa depan. Kampus Islami yang terbuka bagi setiap warga negara, tempatmu belajar akan
saya izin live dulu. Terima kasih.
Tengah-tengah keragaman. Tanpa harus melupakan ketaatan pada nilai-nilai keislaman.
Terima kasih semua.
Dapatkah kamu bayangkan mengecap pengalaman global di kampus mulia? Kompetensi internasional di program studi dengan akreditasi dan sertifikasi dari berbagai negara, seperti Jepang, Korea, Inggris, hingga Amerika. Tempatmu mengeksplorasi ilmu pengetahuan lewat 8 pilihan fakultas dengan 48 program studi yang ditawarkan. Menjadi tempatmu menjemput impian sembari bebas menikmati petualangan kolaborasi dengan ilmuwan dunia. Seraya memperluas wawasan lewat berbagai program kemitraan yang tersebar dalam skala nasional maupun global. Dapatkah kamu bayangkan, kampus swasta paling lestari di Indonesia ini adalah tempatmu menempuh pendidikan tinggi? Kampus unggulan dengan berbagai inovasi berkelanjutan di berbagai bidang. Tempatmu belajar dengan bebas, di tengah rindangnya taman atau dalam nyamannya ruangan. Di luar maupun dalam jaringan, semuanya tak terbatas ruang kelas, tak terhalang jarak dan ruang. Semua disediakan untuk mendukungmu menjadi generasi muda yang aktif dan inovatif dengan keragaman pemikiran yang berbuah menjadi beragam apresiasi. Dapatkah kamu bayangkan jika kampusmu kelak adalah tempat yang mendukungmu sebagai intelektual? Tidak hanya cerdas secara akal, namun juga cerdas spiritual. Di kampus swasta terbaik dengan akar yang kuat dalam tradisi kebebasan akademik, menjadikanmu berani mengekspresikan diri di tengah-tengah zaman yang penuh dengan kompetisi untuk berkontribusi akan solusi dari masalah yang dihadapi. Para sivitas akademika serta lebih dari 107.000 alumni pun telah membuktikan diri menjadi insan ulil albab yang mampu mengintegrasikan ilmu pengetahuan dan ajaran Islam dalam menebar kebermanfaatan di bermacam rumpun keilmuan. Dapatkah kamu bayangkan apabila kampusmu adalah salah satu kampus yang berlokasi di kota pendidikan ini, kota Yogyakarta dengan segudang cerita dan budaya yang beraneka ragamnya, dan Universitas Islam Indonesia hadir sebagai kampus Indonesiawi, berdiri berdampingan dengan ilmu pengetahuan, budaya, dan seni yang memberikan warna indah dalam harmoni. Kini berhenti membayangkan dan sudah saatnya bersiap untuk mewujudkan. Siapkah kamu? Karena kami siap untuk menunjukkan jalannya. Berdiri sejak tahun 1948, Fakultas Bisnis dan Ekonomika Universitas Islam Indonesia telah menjadi bagian dari dinamika kota Yogyakarta yang dikenal akan kekayaan nilai sejarah, pendidikan, dan budayanya. Dengan pengalaman lebih dari 70 tahun dalam menyelenggarakan pendidikan tinggi, kami terus berkomitmen untuk menjadi pusat keunggulan dalam pengembangan ilmu pengetahuan yang mampu menghasilkan insan yang unggul dalam bidang bisnis dan ekonomi sebagai wujud dari cita-cita para pendiri bangsa. Sebagai kampus yang lahir dari perjuangan para cendekiawan Muslim, kami mengembangkan potensi setiap individu dengan memadukan aspek akademis, sosial, dan nilai-nilai keagamaan. Guna memenuhi ragam kebutuhan akan pendidikan tinggi, kami menyediakan berbagai program pada jenjang diploma, sarjana, magister, dan doktor. Dalam rangka menciptakan lingkungan yang ideal untuk mengasah ilmu dan mengembangkan diri guna melahirkan inovasi yang membuahkan prestasi di kancah nasional maupun internasional, kami terus berkomitmen untuk menyediakan fasilitas berkelas dunia. Dengan misi menyelenggarakan pendidikan tinggi bertaraf internasional, kami menjalin kerjasama dengan berbagai institusi terkemuka di luar negeri. Hal ini bertujuan untuk memperluas jaringan dan wawasan guna memiliki daya saing global. Raihan yang menghantarkan kami berada dalam jajaran kampus terbaik di Indonesia bukanlah tujuan akhir, namun merupakan dampak dari ikhtiar yang kami lakukan untuk meraih tujuan yang mulia. Kami meyakini bahwa pendidikan yang baik merupakan perjalanan, yang prosesnya tidak hanya tentang melatih kemampuan berpikir semata, namun juga melatih sikap, kepedulian, dan kesantunan akhlak, yang mampu mengarahkan pada kebaikan yang diteladani, agar nantinya mampu menghasilkan generasi yang unggul, yang mampu menggenggam masa depan, dan mampu menyempurnakan ilmu dengan mengambil peranan yang lebih besar untuk menebar manfaat bagi masyarakat dan ikut berkontribusi dalam memajukan bangsa Indonesia.
Indonesia continues to move rapidly along with the optimism for economic growth and accelerated development in various sectors. In line with technological developments, the business environment now faces the challenges of competition to manage business products and processes better, efficient, and certainly faster. Competitive strengths need to be supported by professionals with characters produced by a superior education process. As the first national university in Indonesia, Universitas Islam Indonesia has a long and outstanding experience in leading and developing high-quality education program in Indonesia. Based on the noble ambition of the founders, UII is here to offer a combination of the advantages of knowledge with Islamic values and nationalism. Located in Yogyakarta, Universitas Islam Indonesia provides a convenient and conducive atmosphere for learning, green and scenic environment, as well as supported by various world-class learning facilities, placing UII as the most sustainable private university in Indonesia in 2018. With its long-standing experience spent across the nation's long history, UII is a university that offers distinguished and high-quality education programs. Accounting Undergraduate Study Program, Faculty of Economics, Universitas Islam Indonesia, is one of the leading undergraduate education programs to answer the challenges and needs of the modern business world. With its accounting learning system supported by professional academics, Accounting Undergraduate Study Program of UII offers a leading education in financial accounting, Islamic accounting, forensic accounting, and information technology. Accounting Undergraduate Study Program of Universitas Islam Indonesia also offers an international program where all academics activities are held using English as the delivery language. Accounting Undergraduate Study Program of Universitas Islam Indonesia continues to develop and maintain partnership and networking with various institutions in the country and overseas. This partnership also opens up opportunities for the accounting students to obtain a joint degree for reputable universities abroad. This is the place for the nation's best generation, ready to work as a professional in accounting and business to advance our country, Indonesia. Find a place now. Be part of the Accounting Undergraduate Study Program of Universitas Islam Indonesia.